Renlud is a world where everyone is born with skills, and that's exactly how civilization took off. People lean on those powers for everything, day after day, until it feels like skills run the whole world. But here's the twist nobody's clocked yet tucked inside Zero. The ones without skill are the real missing piece. A chef explodes onto the scene, ready to cook up something unforgettable. Deep in the forest, a bear tears through the trees at breakneck speed, and a knight in gleaming armor charges after it, then unleashes a light speed skill to finally catch that beast. In the blink of an eye, it shoots toward the beast like lightning. Knight Assel launches onto the beast and smashes it hard across the back with one crushing strike. With a final, gut-wrenching roar, the bear collapses dead, and Assel sinks into herself, trying to steal a breath. Fromm rushes up to her, beaming with joyful shouts, praising her partner and roaring that her strongest Holy Knight title wasn't handed out for nothing. Assel Gavinvillain, an SS-rank adventurer with sonic speed, smiles and slips her sword back into its sheath. Assel locks eyes with the girl, voice heavy with emotion, and tells her to start farming resources from the monsters instead of just chatting. Farm Rizlem is an S-rank adventurer with flame skills, and when Fram just rubs the back of his head like, Yua Osel can do it herself, it says everything. She tells him she's tied up, sweeping the area after the farm. Then, with a heavy sigh of defeat, she still starts the job, slicing up the monster's still warm body to grab the resources, standing over the beast with giant garden-sized scissors. Farm stares down the monster, turns out it's just a bear, and only B rank at that. Farm crouches by the beast's paws, studies those claws up close, and realizes slicing them free from something this monstrous would be a nightmare. Yet she snaps the scissors anyway and goes for it. Farm fights to chop the beast's claws off, but when Assel turns away, he snaps that they're stuck. No proof means no guild reward, and the villagers still have to make sure that monster is truly gone. Elizabeth Close slips up behind the hardworking Farm, throws her arms around her and goes, "I'm an S-rank healer, so stop nagging, just be a good girl for me," her touch gentle on her shoulders. Farms thinks Elizabeth tried to grab the supplies herself, but Elizabeth politely shuts her down, saying she'd rather pray for whoever's out there doing it, not run around herself. Farms isn't thrilled with that, yet she has no choice and just accepts it, because everything's already done anyway. That cell snaps and tells her comrades to back off, because there's nothing left for them to do here. Suddenly, a strange voice yanks the girls away, and a young traveler shows up in front of them, gear, bag, the whole deal, and asks, "If you don't need the monster, can I take it?" The girls stare at him, utterly baffled, and they still can't figure out what he's talking about at all. Osel can't make heads or tails of the boy's words. Why in the world would he want to take a monster? And then she stares at him, all skinny and fragile, wondering what kind of fool shows up alone in a forest packed with deadly monsters. The young man notices the girls are ignoring him, then fires off his question again. Isle snaps her hand to her sword hilt, then shoots the young man a fierce question. What on earth is he planning to do with the monster's body? With a hard glare, she snaps that if he's really about to run dangerous magical experiments, then as a holy knight, she won't stand for it. That young man just grins with zero fear and says he's gonna casually eat the monster. Then the silence hits so hard you can practically hear it. A few moments later, the girls blurt out what he said in shock, completely stunned they actually heard it right. Ossel blurts out, stunned, that the monster's meat is basically useless, so tough it won't bite, and so heavy with dense fat it's impossible to eat. Elizabeth says monster guts are rock hard and considered the lowest grade meat, and she flat out can't imagine anyone actually willing to eat something like that. Farm's face twists with pure disgust. Cold sweat breaks out as her mind flashes to the time she tried monster meat, and the mere thought still makes her stomach turn. With zero hesitation, Farm declares, "Monsters taste awful." But the young man doesn't flinch at their words for a second. He starts stripping off his gear and presses the question again like, "So, do you need a monster or not?" The girls still can't land on a clear answer because doubt swarms their minds, and then all three of them lock arms in a tight circle to hash out what's really happening. They try to lock in their focus and cook up their own arguments, then settle on the same wild idea. He must have been totally lost and starving, so desperate he snapped and decided to go for the monster's meat. Out of nowhere, they hear something grow closer behind them. Assel snaps around instantly. Out of nowhere, a wild wolf lunges in front of the girls, all fluffy, long, gorgeous fur, and those terrifying long, sharp claws that look ready to rip anything apart. Assel snaps to the truth. Standing before them isn't just some beast, it's a divine wolf, and her nerves spike as it starts closing in. Out of nowhere, the wolf trots right up to the boy like a giant puppy, all happy and wagging, and the boy calls him one, teasing that he's a bit late. Then the wolf grins and playfully repeats one right back. He starts petting the wolf's silky fur as it cozies up to him like it's having the best day ever. The girls gasp when the divine beast finally steps into view, and Elizabeth shoots back that you don't get creatures like this right up close to humans. Then she stares at everything unfolding before them, still refusing to believe what her eyes are seeing. She clocks it instantly. This has to be Fenrir, the divine wolf, and legends swear that once it fully matures, it can clear 5 mountains in a single leap. Talk about terrifying. Even in raw power, it's on the level of the most dangerous S-rank monsters. Asul had never seen a beast mesh with a human like that. Meanwhile, the young man leans in, staring at the monster's body with sharp curiosity, and the wolf eyes the bear like it's about to be dinner. Right after that, the young man yanks off his backpack and pulls out a huge bundle like it's hiding something massive. Then he snaps it into place, grips a giant leaf and drops it onto the ground. Farm blurts to his companions that this is a yoga leaf. People use it on the road because it helps with insulation and other handy perks. And then the young man folds his hands, shuts his eyes, and dives into his work. Then he shoves his hand into the bear's open wound and rips out one of its organs. He stares at the gallbladder, relieved it's still whole, then ties a tight little knot right on top of the bladder. And moments later, the young man dives right back into the monster's insides, rummaging like he means to finish the job. After he's gutted the animal, he spreads his bloody spoils out on a scrap of yoga paper, then stands there grinning like the job is done, wiping the red from his hands with a little cloth. Farm and Elizabeth can't handle it. The sight and stink make them sick. Then this mad lad drags the bear's carcass into action and tears off every last bit of fur. He slices the monster with razor-sharp skill, chopping out huge chunks of its whole meat in a blur. Estelle watches him work in silence, clocking just how fast and precise he is, and she knows this isn't some first-timer's job because his hands are already trained for chopping up monsters. And he didn't just do it once or twice. He went on and on, dozens of times, even hundreds, and now every cell is buzzing, desperate to know who this young man really is. Suddenly, Farm's nose twitches. She sniffs the air, the disgust drains from her face, and she blurts out to Asal, "Tell me you smell that." Elizabeth yanks her handkerchief away too, and her eyes narrow as she confirms it. The scent is totally wrong, not even close to what it should be. Asal nods along, saying monster corpses usually reek of blood and rot. Because, according to the scientists, that stench comes from monsters chewing up people. Leaning in for a closer look at the big chunks of meat on the table, the girls realized it didn't just smell amazing. It looked downright irresistible too. Asal sniffs the monster's meat and suddenly doubts herself, because it smells way too normal. Like it might even be tasty, and the farm, trying to sound casual but totally stumbling, turns to the guy and blurts out if he's actually going to cook it. The young man thinks fast, then grins and says the meat is so juicy he'll stew it. Only Osel and the others perk up at stew and beetles, because those sounds are almost identical. Then she whips around to her comrades, but they're lost too. Eselle's hearing about this method for the first time, totally baffled, and her mind starts conjuring wild images of beetles skewered on sticks. After that, she got totally hooked on the cooking and kept staring at that young guy like he was magic, because he was firing up a strange device that turned a chunk of wood into real flame. Farm spots it and lunges to help the boy spark the fire, firing up flames with her skill, until the boy jerks back and shuts her out, refusing to let her get any closer. He tells her thanks for the help, but shuts it down fast, because the flame she can light is so brutal it doesn't even need saving. Isle nods along in silence, then spots his tiny flame, and her mind instantly races. Could you really cook anything on a fire that small? The young man chopped the meat into bite-sized pieces with a tiny camp dagger, then paused, scanning the area hard, hunting for his next move. He slips deeper into the forest where bamboo towers, walks for a bit, and spots the perfect stalk just waiting for him. Asal fires back, asking why he even needs bamboo, and she's pretty sure he's about to turn it into a dish. The young man whips in sharp, lightning-fast cuts through the bamboo, then slides pieces of meat inside like he's about to cook up something dangerous. Then he coils the bamboo tight, cinching it down with thread until it's locked in place. After that, he strides up to the flames and drops the bamboo-wrapped meat straight into the heart of the fire. Everyone else is stunned by what he just did, because they've never seen anything like it before. The meat hits the fire, sizzling away, and right as it starts cooking, the smoky smell starts rolling out like a warning. Once the young man yanks out the bamboo and pops it open, the smell hits hard, because inside sits delicious, ready-made meat waiting for him. Everyone in the room catches this weird, strange smell, and the girls instantly freeze, stunned by how insanely delicious that aroma is coming straight from the meat. Asel stares at the meat and can't believe how juicy it looks, shimmering with a crystal-clear glow. Farm also swears the meat gleams in this gorgeous amber glow, so stunning it almost takes your breath away, and Elizabeth's nose catches a mouth-watering scent, but she can't believe it's coming from the monster's flesh. Asul can barely hold herself back, her hands itch to grab a bite of that meat. Right out of the corner of her eye, she spots the divine wolf sliding up to the meat, snatching a bite and gulping it down in a flash. Then it erupts into joyful howls, lifting its muzzle to the sky like it just hit the jackpot. The girls gasp when the wolf's fur puffs up like it's bracing for impact, and just watching that reaction makes it click. Farm still can't believe the meat is really that ridiculously tasty. Right now, the young man rubs the wolf's fluffy fur, and the beast just keeps acting like a giant happy puppy. The cell can't believe it. How can something this majestic, the kind that stuns hearts with pure awe, be this overjoyed? When even the divine beast looked at the dish this young man cooked and genuinely appreciated it. She can't stop herself, curiosity rips through her and she's desperate to take a bite. She doesn't say a word, and right then the young man decides to step up and put his own cooking to the test. He scoops the bite with his fork, shoves it into his mouth, and then boom, he grins like he just found pure satisfaction. He smiles like he's savoring heaven itself, declaring the food insanely delicious, and Asal, caught watching, swallows hard, nerves roaring. She finally steps up to the guy, and when he spins around, Isles stammering blurts out that they can try too, because they want a piece of the action just like everyone else. The young man smirks and fires back, teasing them, "You sure you want to eat that monster's meat? It's tough and the fat's so sticky it'll cling to you," basically echoing every word they just said. The girls squirm at the thought of their own words from just a moment ago, but they quickly admit they really want to try. So Isle leans in and says the young man already grabbed their attention, meaning he has to let them give it a shot. With a warm smile, the young man shakes his head. He's no greedy fool, and tells them he feels no regret at all. Then he lays the meat out for the girls on a single plate. He names the meal bear stew asterisk, insisting it's Dish Makona's specialty asterisk. His own, don't you forget. And then Dish slaps a plate into their hands, one of them grabbing the other as if they're both in on the moment. The girls beam at the finished meat, still steaming hot like it's fresh off the grill. Farm leans in and says the dish looks even crazier up close, and Elizabeth can't help it. Her mouth waters as the juicy goodness pours out of the meat. She takes the plate, grabs a spoonful of meat and says, "No matter how it looks, it all comes down to the flavor," then slams a full spoon into her mouth, determined to prove the meat tastes as good as it looks. The other girls copy her move, each takes a bite, and right after that taste hits like a wrecking wave, ripping their minds wide open. For a few tense seconds they say nothing. Then Asal erupts in a scream of pure admiration, shouting that the food is absolutely delicious. She snatches up the meat and devours it without holding back, stunned as she blurts out that she can't believe she's eating monster meat right now, because with every bite, it melts in her mouth like magic. Elizabeth takes a bite and her eyes widen. She swears that this tender, sweet meat sweeps her off her feet like a waterfall of sauce, and suddenly she's drowning in pure, mind-blowing flavor. Farm is stunned to realize this meat tastes nothing like anything she's ever had before. Then she spots the truth. The dish had already sliced it up with a knife, making it turn tender. She's also relieved this dish doesn't stink like those monsters, and a soft, delicate aroma slips in through her nose, curling around her whole body until it hits her right then. Estelle leans in and asks Farm if she's okay, but the shock on her face screams it all. Then Farm blurts out, stunned, that she can't remember that awful monster meat taste anymore. No way Isle buys it. She blinks in disbelief and snaps that anyone with taste this bad can't possibly be right. Farm knew it, but the moment she took a bite of that cursed stewed bear, the horrifying taste that had haunted her for years vanished on the spot. The girls keep chowing down, eyes shining, savoring every bite as they can't believe that terrible meat has been transformed into a top-tier feast by a truly skilled chef. The three girls are savoring the blissful moment, until a sudden thought slams into Asal's mind and she's yanked away from her food in an instant. She whips around to Dish, clamps her hands on his shoulders and glares at him like thunder as she demands to know how he pulled it off. She shakes him hard and blurts, "Where did you learn to cook like that?" Because even though they watched him whip up that monster with their own eyes, there's no way it can be this good. Luckily, Farm manages to drag her partner away before Asal can do more damage, but Dish is still reeling from what Asal pulled, and she points out that he didn't even use his skills while cooking. Asal doesn't believe a single word he just said. She leans in and asks Disha how he managed to cook something this tasty from monster meat so tough and foul-smelling, without even using a single skill. Dish just shrugs and says he can't use those skills at all, because he's a zero, nothing more, nothing less. Asal fires back again, totally lost on what that even means. Dish pretty much laughs it off by calling himself a zero cook, admitting he's got zero skill. Dish finally steps up to the girls and blurts that he's a cook and a complete zero. Then they snap into action, swarming him with non-stop aggressive questions. They demand how he could take down a divine beast with zero training and somehow cook monster meat into something so mouthwatering. The girls bicker over the answers, talking over each other, until the dish itself finally smacks the whole debate out of their stream. He clenched his jaw, gave up resisting, and finally sat the girls down to tell everything from the very first day, because it all began 10 years ago. Disha, still a kid in rags, gets tossed out onto the street, and the huge brute in front of him slams the truth down. He's fired, and Disha better not ever come back. The man blurts out, "You're a zero," right on the street, and passersby hear it. Then whispers explode in the crowd, spinning rumors about the kid, with some claiming he's the scientist's child left behind after the monster's curse killed his father. Meanwhile, the man tells Dish, Look, sure, it's genuinely admirable that a kid with no skills is at least trying to feed himself. After they hired Dish, the complaints started piling in fast. Because the man warned them you can't tell customers the food's gone stale or the water's dirty, and then the boy got flat out kicked out of the place. The boy pushed himself up off the dirt, shaking every last speck from his clothes, then shrugged that he wasn't slacking. He was just tending the customers, not babysitting that careless owner. He even claims that anyone, no matter how clueless, could cook better than these locals and that the man can't fire him since he quit first. And with those words, the furious guy swings and smashes Dish with everything he's got. He snaps at the child, snarling that he'll hurl him into the mountains for those words. Then Dish's eyes suddenly go dark. After some time, Dish groans and jolts, awake from the faint he crashed into when that brutal boss cracked him with a heavy-handed blow. Now he's sitting on the ground, racked with sharp pain all over. Dish finally shakes off the haze, snaps his head up, and boom, realizes he's not in the city at all but deep in the forest, with darkness closing in and no clue where he is. Suddenly it clicks, Dish spots a forested mountain looming on the horizon miles away. He finally gets it, the boss, or the old boss, must have dumped him out in the mountains for good. And with everything pitch black and terrifying, he's still just a kid. Couldn't make himself move until the dawn finally broke. After sunrise, Dish stumbled through the forest, wide awake all night, surrounded by monsters and starving to the bone, when he suddenly heard something and froze. He spots a B-rank two-horned beast not far off. This massive two-horned horse towering in the dark, craving shadow more than daylight. Yeah, it's a herbivore, but it's still terrifying as it rams its horns into the trees to grab the fruit, then chomps it down. Dish watches the monster, hiding behind the bushes and peeking like his life depends on it. He remembers the monsters from his father's book, but this is the first time one is standing right in front of him. Plus, he knows it's not something anyone's going to eat, and Dish has zero way to fight or kill it. But he never falls into despair. Trees are loaded with edible fruit, the rivers packed with fish, and he can even hunt small animals to make it through. When he finally reaches the mountains, he bursts into real joy. Nobody's going to bark at him up there, so he can clown around and cook to his heart's content without a single worry. He snatches that fruit the bichorns are munching because it looks insanely delicious, and decides to take the first bite to see what they're all about. He fails hard. He collapses on the ground in defeat beside the fruit, only to find its shell is too tough to break with his teeth. Out of nowhere, Dish spots a tiny white mountain rabbit creeping toward his food. Then it snatches the fruit in its mouth and bolts, and Dish scrambles to chase it down. He drops to the ground, shoulders slumped, already accepting he'll never catch that rabbit. Then he stares at his hands like they've betrayed him, swallowed by despair. Dish can't shake the thought that if he'd only had the chance, everything would have turned out different, but even now with his hopes crushed, he still clings to one stubborn idea. He might survive. Still with zero skill, he had nowhere to go, nothing to do but spiral into despair. And Dish finally decides that if that's the only ending left, then he'll accept fate and die. He shuts his eyes and misses the shadow creeping over him, then bam, something slimy splats across his head. Dish jerks his eyes open, panics, and snatches the slime with his own hands. He thrashes and claws at the thing, trying to rip it off, gasping for air, because a Rankef slime monster ambushed him. Yeah, the weakest kind of monster, so weak even kids can take it down. Every single year, tons of adventurers end up dead in their sleep because of it. And yeah, it's terrifying, but you can avoid the danger if you stay sharp and careful. Dish tries to bolt but slams his head into a rock and everything goes sharp and black. With that punch, he smashes straight into the slime's core, pop. It bursts like a balloon and slumps into a puddle of liquid. Dish finally stops running long enough to catch her breath. He studies the slime's wreckage and spots a tiny ball beside it, with a thread dangling out like some sick little organ, and then it clicks. This is the slime's shattered core, and the whole thing probably croaked because it split open. Slime-soaked Dish whoops with pure joy over his insane luck, but his stomach is still growling. Dish stares at the tiny blob of slime, scoops it up and goes, "Whoa, this looks delicious." Like sky blue jam just begging to be eaten. Dish shoots back to his father's warning, monsters taste awful and this slime is probably one of them. But his growling hunger starts to second-guess everything. He stalls for what feels like forever, then finally snaps into action and shoves his fingers, slick with a little mucus, straight into his mouth. To his shock, he takes one bite, and that slime is ridiculously tasty. At first it tastes sweet, then the sweetness sours into bitter, and he even swears that the mucus tastes like sugar water right before it turns. He's obsessed with that flavor. Those tiny bitter notes snap in and then the sweetness bursts through, leaving behind a smooth, satisfying aftertaste that lingers like a victory. Dish suddenly feels his whole body perk up, because this jelly hits like pure, refreshing fire. That first bite hits your mouth like it's rock solid. Then boom, it liquefies instantly, so Dish names it Premium Jelly, aka Slime Jelly. A little later, Dish hustled along with slime from 3 more slimes, stuffed in a bag he stitched from his own shirt. Then it hit him. Why did it taste *so *ridiculously good? Because his dad warned him, monsters taste absolutely terrible, he clings to that memory and even remembers the words from his dad's book. The jelly part of slime is called slurry. So he yanks out the busted slime core and there it is, a thin vessel stretching out from it. On the core, Dish spots another skinny appendage, and when he sees those little bumps, he swears that's the slime's mouth. Then the next second, slime starts pouring out from the very tip. It drips onto the leaves and starts chewing them up, and then Dish snaps. Yeah, this thing is basically the slime's stomach in action. He figures the cure must be loaded with dissolved nutrients and sugar. He finally gets why his body's buzzing like this. My guess is the sugar hit him harder than he expected. Dish decides to take another bite of that jelly he'd been saving, and the sweetness is still there, but the flavor has twisted into something totally wrong. It tastes awful. Dish says it feels like he chewed sweet, rotten meat, or swallowed sour juice that burned his throat raw, and he even swears it was 100 times worse than sweet pepper puree. Now all that sweetness and bitterness crash together, and Dish reels in disgust from how wrong the flavors feel. So for him, it's worse than any scraps or rotten food he's ever choked down, like real hell in his mouth. Dean tried it just once, but he already knows that taste will stalk him in his nightmares forever. Because now he finally gets what his father was warning him about. Dish rips open his makeshift bag, dumps everything out and stares at the spoiled jelly. Because just a little while ago it tasted incredible and now he's completely baffled. But now it's straight up awful, like everything flipped overnight. Dish clocks it instantly. Yeah, the jelly really did go bad. He starts thinking maybe monster meat isn't the problem, maybe it just spoils way too fast. Like that slime did, and suddenly everything clicks. That's why nobody wants monster meat, because once it's rotten it's guaranteed to taste awful. Dish figures it out, just cook the meat before it spoils and the problem's gone. He realizes that if he's right, those mountains could be a treasure chest. And even though Disha keeps getting humiliated and scolded for his lousy skills, he refuses to quit, dreaming up a whole buffet of dishes nobody's ever dared to try. Now he's free to whip up mouthwatering meals to his heart's content, grinning like he's on top of the world, and he vows to anyone listening that one day, people will absolutely rave about his food. So that's how he became a cook. And as a total beginner, he chose to vanish into the mountains. 10 years later, Dish is sprawled face down on the dirt, totally helpless, while his stomach growls like thunder because the hunger is eating him alive. After all this time, he'd soaked up everything and started feeling more at home in the mountains than anyone alive. But lately, bad luck has been hunting him like a nightmare. He's been unable to catch a single person for ages, and the grapevines he snagged earlier are already wiped out by monsters. Then, out of nowhere, the dish clamps over the hole and he suddenly feels something brush his hair. He figures it must be some creature's tongue, so he whips his head toward the dog, only to blurt that sorry, he's definitely not tasty at all. And then, right in front of his eyes, the dog turns out to be a wolf. He stares at the wolf, massive as a mountain, and the fur looks so dangerously fluffy that he can't stop himself from wanting to reach out and touch it. A tense silence hangs in the air. Dish and the wolf stare each other down, unmoving. Then the wolf suddenly lunges in and sniffs hard, and Dish panics, diving into his pockets like, okay, what do you want? He fishes a tiny ball from his pocket, steps right in front of the wolf, and the wolf perks up, wagging like a big happy puppy with its tongue out. Then Dish hurls the ball and the wolf snaps it out of the air like it was born to catch it. The wolf sinks its teeth into the ball, tastes something strange and wonderful, and immediately erupts into a happy howl, then raises the fashion up. Dish grins because the wolf devours the food, and the wolf purrs like it's whispering hoon. Then, out of nowhere, a strange sound snaps them both around. A huge slime oozes in between the rocks and Dish's stomach drops. This is the worst possible moment, because it's hungry and he's barely got any strength left. He's ready to snap back until the wolf suddenly steps right in front of him. Then he lunged straight at the slime and swiped it away with one killer paw, leaving Disha staring in shock at the wolf's insane strength. Then he steps up to the wolf and thanks him with all his heart for guarding him, and Dish realizes this is the first time in his life anyone has ever stood up for him. The wolf just gently licks Dish's face, and Dish tells him, no, you gotta thank him the right way. Then he shoves a bucket into his hands and orders him to go grab water from the nearby river. The wolf clamps the bucket in his mouth and bolts into the distance, growling again as that same terrifying sound echoes after him. While the wolf dashed off to fetch water, Dish worked like a spark catcher, blazing up a fire of his own. So when the wolf came back, everything was roaring, and Dish immediately thanked him for the job. Dish kicks off cooking. He boils water in a big bowl over the fire, then dumps slime solution in a smaller one, using the slime he just crushed from the wolf. The wolf leans in, eyes locked on the process, while Dish breaks it down. This style of cooking is called a water bath, and it's how you cook ingredients that love to burn the second the heat hits. He scoops the slime into a smaller bowl, sets it into a bigger bowl of boiling water, then lets it heat up just enough. After that, he drops the whole thing into a cold spot to harden it. He plops the frozen mass onto a plate and proudly calls it his original creation, slime taffy. Then the wolf stares in pure delight and jaw-dropping amazement. He purrs with pure joy and dives back into the taffy, crunching it down like it's his favorite. Then Dish snatches a small piece too, and while he chews, he explains the basics of cooking to the wolf, his only listener. He swears the dish is sweet. Natural kick comes from the slimes feasting on everything from juicy fruits to rock salt, so the flavor hits deeper and richer than any candy made with plain sugar. And he claims skilled chefs can instantly blast food hot or chill it cold, so one sudden temperature shift can completely smash or supercharge the taste and texture. Dish is thrilled. After all, even a zero can learn to cook without any fancy skills, and he beams, asking the wolf if it likes what he made. The wolf purrs happily, calm and satisfied, then charges right at the youth. Dish laughs and happily scratches the contented furball as it barrels in. After a while, Dish finally works up the courage to ask the wolf its name, only for the wolf to purr again, sounding just like one. Dish realizes the wolf can't talk, so he names him anyway, and when he asks if the new name fits, the wolf grins with pure joy. Soon, Dish and one huddled in the bushes, eyes locked on their next victims, their future prey, a pack of wild errant crows. Getting them won't be easy because these things are quick, hard to pin down, and they stick together in flocks. Dish tells his buddy that wild raven meat is the tastiest thing on earth, and the wolf practically lights up. Then Dish snaps, "Now catch one by the throat and don't you dare hurt its body." At the exact same moment, one madman charges in and batters a whole flock of crows, while Dish watches the savage chaos unfold, blasted by their loud, non-stop cawing. One is powerful and swings straight brute force, but in the end he finally snags the biggest raven in the flock, and Dish wastes no time praising him, calling him an excellent hunter. With the little fire roaring to life, Dish gets to work on the bird's remains. He slices off its head, yanks out the feathers, then fires up a tiny torch and chars the carcass until it's singed. He shaves off every last tiny feather, then slices and strips, legs first, guts next, until he's finally carving the meat away from the bones with careful precision. Dish stares at that huge chunk of meat and grins like he just struck gold. This crow is as big as 3 normal birds. Nearby, one impatient bird is already licking his lips with his tongue out, but Dish snaps, "Hold up," because he's about to fry it. Dish chops the meat into juicy cubes, lines them on skewers, and fries them until they're golden. Then boom, raven shashlik hits your taste buds like pure heaven. Dish snatched one skewer clean away, and the wolf stared at it like it was a feast sent from the heavens, eyes blazing with joy and anticipation. Then Dish grabbed a bite from the other skewer too. After one bite of the meat, Dish and one were blown away, speechless with how insane that flavor was. The second Dish bites into the meat, that rich fat melts into a sweet, mouth-watering flavor, like it only happens with top-tier meat. And get this, the outside turns perfectly crispy, while the inside stays tender and juicy. Dish knows these killer birds hunt for more than just meat. They chow down on fruits and nuts too, and that's exactly why raven's flesh tastes so delicate and layered. Dish and one keep devouring the meat, and Dish practically raves that it tastes nothing like nasty, tough, cheap cuts. This stuff is rich, tender, and ridiculously good. After they finished eating, Dish and one sank down on the ground, finally letting their bodies relax. One fluffy, long-furred creature curled up, and the Dish promptly flopped down beside the wolf's huge body, resting there so softly it felt like a whisper. He swears this is his 3rd time eating it, but this round blew the others out of the water. It was the most delicious thing he's ever tasted. He's convinced it's because he chowed it down with one of them, and then he grins and tells you, straight up, that he's hoping he'll have his partner beside him in the future. Right then, Dish closes his autobiography, the one he's been spinning for Isle, Elizabeth, and Farm this whole time, only to glance up and realize the girls aren't listening at all. They're too busy devouring their food like it's the main event. Rage flares in him. He's no longer sure the girls heard a single word he said. Acel snaps at him not to stare like that, swearing she caught everything crystal clear, but Dish clearly isn't buying it. After that, Isle blurts that she's dying to try fried raven, and Dish finally realizes nobody was ever listening to his story. He lets out a tired sigh then, like a switch flicks. His warm smile comes back, and he promises that if the chance pops up, he'll cook this dish for them for sure. Right then, Isal snaps to action and decides, "We're crow hunting now." Farm reminds them they still need to swing by the guild to check in, and Elizabeth adds, "Careful, sunset-s coming fast." Back then, Dish Mackin, the Zero Chef, had no clue that someday the whole world would shout his name. Inside the mansion, in a quiet room, Asel sits at a table stacked with all kinds of food. No armor now, just a simple light dress and a necklace gleaming at her throat. But she doesn't touch a thing. Depression hangs over her face like a shadow. Then someone calls her name and she's dragged away. Granson and Carol huddle side by side, eyes locked on the worried lady. Carol asks, "Didn't you like what I served you today?" Granson shakes his head, says the dish came out amazing, and politely begs her to take a bite. He even claims the lady skips meals because she's locked herself into some ridiculous diet. And in the Welland household, Carol Harness is the maid while Granson Marlem is the butler. Carol mixes things like a pro, and Granson unleashes water attacks. Estelle stares at them, flashes a smile, and shoots out an apology, then she shrugs it off like, I just got lost in my thoughts, and he instantly grabs a chunk of meat and bites into it. She nods, digs in, and declares the food absolutely delicious. The beef is cooked exactly how she likes it, and she heaps praise on Carol for whipping up a dish that'll refill her stamina fast. She even praises Granson for whipping up that top-notch juice, but the princess can't shake it. Deep down, she still can't forget the taste of that monster dish. After dinner, Isle storms over to the window, shoves it open with raw strength, and declares she's heading to the mountains tomorrow to find Dish. Because even as the strongest holy knight, she can't resist. The very next day, Asal charges back to the mountains, armor on, sword drawn, and this time she knows she's in the right place, but she has no clue where to hunt down Disha. Her stomach rumbled loud with hunger, and she couldn't shake the thought that the young man might not belong in this forest at all. Maybe he'd simply come from some other city. Asal knows she can't stand a chance against those brutal monsters. She's starving, but she refuses to quit because she's convinced fate lined them up for one reason, his cooking. At that exact moment, a massive bear bursts from the bushes and charges straight at Isal. She's packed with tension, no group to lean on, her stomach growling and her body running out of strength. But then as she stares at the bear, she suddenly decides, yeah, that thing looks delicious. Starved to the bone, she lunges at the monster with fierce fury. Then, just as the knight is about to swing his sword at the bear, the divine wolf explodes forward and snaps onto his neck with its mouth. Asel decides to stay out of it, then freezes when it studies the wolf, because he's the same guy who was with Dish that day. She stared in awe as the wolf crushed the bear with one brutal strike, and even she knew she couldn't pull off the same feat, because Fenrir was pure terrifying power. Asel clocks it instantly. If the wolf is here, then the one she came for has to be close too. Right on cue, Dish bursts from the nearby bushes, bragging about how great one's been doing. Asal is bursting with joy because she finally found Disha, and her reaction even freaks him out. He doesn't instantly recognize her, all he can think is that he's seen her somewhere before. He scrambles to remember the girl, and Asal stares in shock at his lightning-fast way of forgetting. Asal forces herself to breathe, snaps out of the panic, and realizes she's fussing way too much. So she winces at how awkward it feels to admit she's come back just to taste Disha's cooking again, and instead decides to kick things off by starting a conversation first. She marches in, introduces herself, and blurts out an apology for the interruption, then calls him by name, shocking Disha, and he just has to praise Asal for remembering everything perfectly. Asal snaps back, furious, insisting it's totally natural she remembered his name, because who could forget someone who cooks food that good? Then she swings the conversation to something else on the spot. She's been suspicious from the start, like she's been wondering the whole time if Dish made a deal with the wolf. Dishbit's the one doting on him, telling everyone Isal acts weird around him, and insisting the only reason is that he's nothing but her pet. Asal freezes for a split second, totally baffled. Then she bursts forward and screams at Dish again, snarling that she can't believe he even pulled a divine beast into his world as a pet, because there's no way those things can be tamed. Dish shrugs and casually admits he just handed one kid some candy and Asal's totally blown away. He points out, I told you this the other day, but right then they were so busy stuffing their faces she didn't catch it. Asal realizes she just skipped this part of the story, but she still can't wrap her head around it. Dish actually tamed one with candy like it was nothing, even though that creature's been untamable for ages. Asel quizzed Dish about his skills, but he snapped back that he had none. Then Asel blurted out an apology for forgetting. Dish politely asks her to say a bit more, and it instantly pleases Isle. She's already itching to keep talking, until a thunderous rumble from her own stomach cuts her off. She mumbles an embarrassed apology, admits she hasn't eaten a bite since the morning, and warns that darkness is creeping in fast. She cringes at the thought of asking, but she still turns to Dish and begs, do you have any food? Dish grins and says, if it's edible you're after, then the only thing I've got is the bear I just caught. Asal's cheeks burn even hotter than before, then she blurts out, can Dish cook the bear again like last time? He only throws out an apology and says he can't make it today, yet Isle can't get a single word out. She just crumples to the floor, crushed by despair. Dish clocks it instantly. The girl isn't just curious, she's desperate to try that dish again. He blurts that he can't cook it right now because the forests have no bamboo, and bamboo is the only thing with the perfect moisture for stewing. Asal just can't wrap his head around where that moisture could possibly come from in a plant so dry. Even though she can't wrap her head around it, if he swears it's true, she buys it. Then Dish whips her gaze to the one looming over the beast's carcass, tail wagging and tongue hanging out, and says Isle isn't the only one salivating for a meal. Then he pushes Isle to head to his place, but Isle goes bright red, mortified, because she knows someone of her status just shouldn't be visiting him. The second Dish promises to feed her something delicious. She wastes no time and agrees to meet him. The three stumble upon a colossal tree with a thick trunk and iron-like roots, and right between them sits a wooden door, reached by a rough, worn staircase. The heroes crowd in beside him, ready for whatever hits next. Ossel stared at that massive tree and couldn't help wondering just how many years it had been standing there. Dish admits he has no idea, then calls the tree the Guardian, because no monsters ever seem to come near it, and somehow the whole area stays calm and peaceful. He swings the door open and waves the guest inside, but he grimly warns them that rain and wind still push their way in, so the chill hits hard the moment they step in. Dish clocks that Ossel isn't rushing to step inside and shoots back, "Aren't you coming in?" Ossel blushes and asks where everyone else is, and Dish just shrugs. He lives alone. She's got this nervous, confused look on her face, but inside her mind's screaming. Because she got pulled in with food, showed up to meet that guy, and she's frantically trying to talk herself into believing this is not a date. Dish locks eyes with the girl and asks if she wants to grab food outside, and Ossel's face lights up instantly. So Dish smiles and says they can eat out because the weather is perfect. So he demands that Ossel bring him dishes, and Ossel immediately nods, dish after dish cooking up like pure fire. And again, he hacked the meat into bite-sized pieces. Ossel notices for the second time again just how flawlessly he works and how effortlessly he prepares the meat. And when she sees it, she still can't wrap her head around it being monster meat, even though she's watching this cook for the second time. This time, Dish tosses a bowl of water onto the fire. Once it starts boiling, he drops in pieces of meat and lets it cook. As the dish simmers, he grabs a ladle and skims off the foam that rises to the surface of the water. Ossel watched Dish scrape the foam off by hand and then blurted, "Wouldn't holy water make this easier?" She'd heard the foam shows up only when the meat's dirty. Dish remembers that they normally smash that nasty foam using their cleanse skill. Ossel smacks the table and confirms that this is exactly what holy water is for, then quizzes Dish on how he cooks it differently. Dish admits he tried just using water, but the flavor vanished along with the foam, so he strips it away by hand. He pulls out a tiny root and tells Ossel it's from a local plant, ginger. Then he grins and urges her to taste it, slicing the ginger into strips as he does. Ossel grabs one strip and slips it into her mouth. Then her face clenches from that harsh ginger burn, and tears suddenly spill into her eyes as she struggles to swallow. She goes on and on about how spicy it is, but it's the good kind, warm, throat-clearing perfection. Because the longer she chews, the more this special sweetness starts to bloom. Dish lights up because Isle loves the ingredient, and he tells her that ginger even brings extra warmth. Then Isle feels it instantly, her body warming up for real. Dish swears ginger packs cleansing power, blasting away the smell from meat like it never happened. While the meat sizzles, Dish hustles over to a nearby pot, swings it open. And right then, a weird smell hits the air, growing even stronger when he snatches a chunk from the mix piled there with the peas. Dish flings that foul-smelling lump of food on the board right in front of Asshole. Then he asks if she's ever tried miso, so Isal, clueless about it, recoils hard, picturing it wrong from how it looks and smells. Dish looks at her like she's lost her mind, then shrugs it off as just fermented bean paste, and Asol tries to swallow the shock instead. She remembers hearing about fermentation once, mostly for brewing liquor, but this is the first time she's ever seen beans turned into something like that. And still, when she stares at me like that, she can't bring herself to make the ugly associations that would turn her stomach. She finally steadies herself and trusts Dish, convinced he'd never slip miso into the meal. Then, in the very next heartbeat, Dish dumps all the miso straight into the boiling water, and Asel's eyes go wide in total disbelief. He says that once the miso hits, he skips the sugar and drops in a taffy made from a slime solution, then lets the meat simmer for a little and boom, the dish is ready. He drops the meat into a deep bowl and serves his guests straight-up miso meat. No frills, just bold flavor. Isle leans in, drawn by the mouth-watering scent wafting from the dish, but her early gut feelings make her hesitate. As Asal hesitated, Juan had already dug into his portion with total joy, scarfing it down like it was pure heaven. And as Dish nuzzles contentedly along, Asal hesitates for a beat, then finally takes a piece of meat and slips it into her mouth. Right in that exact moment, a mind-blowing, unreal taste explodes in her mouth. She dives in and chews that slow-cooked meat like it's pure magic, one bite, and it turns tender then melts on her tongue, so she keeps eating, never once slowing down. She tastes it slowly build up on her tongue, and just like that, the ginger wipes out the nasty flavor of the meat, then leaves her with a cool, refreshing aftertaste. She can practically feel the miso pulling the flavors together. The salty hit makes the sweetness pop, and once it's mixed with the meat, they click in perfect harmony. Asel inwardly apologizes for ever calling miso something nasty, because once she takes a bite, it turns out to be a divine duo that floods her whole body with pure sweetness. She even goes, miso was probably cooked up just to match meat. She clears her whole portion in one go, then blurts out, more. Dish is happy to refill her plate, but he warns her straight, if she keeps gulping down those big chunks, her stomach's going to flip out. Asel ignores him and dives onto another bite of meat, promising him she'll be careful, while deep down she knows she can't stop herself. At the end, every last piece of meat got devoured, and Ossel couldn't stop praising it, especially the stewed bear and the bear served with meat, calling them simply amazing, and that first meal together somehow opened up a whole new world for her. She flashes the cook a heartfelt thank you, then asks if she can come back to him again. Disha promises him she'll come anytime she wants. Asel gives a sharp goodbye, then vanishes down the path, while Dish and Juan just stand there staring as she disappears. Suddenly Dish blurts out, "So tell me, why did I even come to this forest?" Dish is chilling at home when bam, he hears loud commotion at his door, and before he can even blink, Isle crashes in shouting that disaster just hit. Ever since that day, Dish has been showing up every single day, and he tries to remember her name but keeps messing up, calling her Azazel. Azel snaps right back, furious that he even thinks her name sounds like a demon. Dish throws in a quick apology, pivots the conversation, and asks her guest what went wrong, since she showed up way earlier than usual. Isle finally blurts out the truth, and boom, she's suddenly moving way faster than before. Disha never even sweats what she says. She's already proven she can move fast enough to beat the usual, a whole day trip from the city to his house. And she does it again and again, every single day after she finishes her tasks. Asal shuts him down, snatches his attention, and demands he look at the paper she hands over. Dish grabs it, demands to know what it is, and Asal tells him straight up. It's her stat sheet. Dish doesn't have a clue what a stat sheet is, so she breaks it down. The guild keeps checking every adventurer all the time, and she even got hers from her admin. Asal made Dish lean in and read what was written on the table. Then Dish's eyes landed on the numbers, and he realized Asal's weight was shockingly high. That hit her like a punch, and embarrassment turned into fury as she snapped that he'd looked in the wrong place. Dish tells him she keeps showing up for him all the time, so yeah. It's not exactly shocking that she's put on weight, and then Asal slams down, demanding he read the line right below. Dish stares down at the line below and spots 999, Asal's agility level, and he's blown away while Asal grins like it's the coolest thing ever, practically glowing with joy. Dish tells everyone he heard the parameter limit is 999, then he turns to Asal and asks, "Are you sure that number isn't just a glitch?" She fires back that practice has proven her worth, then leans in and tells me how she recently ran into a whole pack of maned wolves. Dish points out that maned wolves are brutal opponents because they hit with insane speed, so if you don't take out their leader fast, you'll struggle to beat the pack, and even Juan gets wrecked by them sometimes. Asal nods along, but then he hits him with it, this time's different for real. She tells Dish about her latest mission with Elizabeth and Marf, how she wiped out a maned wolf in seconds and still kept pace with them at full speed. Disha's locked in on this because these wolves won't go down that easily. Asal nods along, but she can't stop thinking about what happened to her. She didn't level the skill, so there's no way the numbers should have shifted, yet they did, and it's not even a one-off. She swears she's run the loyalty check again and again and still nothing moves, and Dish looks intrigued, but there's zero shock on her face. Asal demands to know why this happened, and Dish shrugs like he already knows. Then he tells her to come over to his place before he spills the truth, because Asal's definitely not ready to step inside his house. She swears she's passed that Dish 100 times, but she's never stepped inside, and this is the instant a guy finally asks her to come over, and she knows she's a lady, so she refuses the offer. Then Dish grins like he owns the place and says, "You know me, I whipped up my usual mouth-watering miso soup," and he's sure Isle's going to love it. A few minutes later, Asel slumped into a wooden chair inside Disha's house, furious at herself for caving to temptation and vowing to stay sharp and on guard. She whips her gaze around as Dish scrambles over something in the kitchen. Shelves crowd every corner, packed with pots and cups of ingredients. Asal just gapes, realizing his whole home reeks of mouth-watering food, and he asks if she ever eats anything here, clocking how she can't stop staring at it all. Asel trembles and blurts, "Are all these pots ruined? Can we even eat?" Dish just grins and says, "Nothing's inedible, except you shouldn't touch anything, because your soup portion is already cooked and waiting." After that, Dish slaps her bowl of soup onto the wooden table, right in front of him, because this new specialty is coming in hot. Miso soup loaded with meat and vegetables. Asal leans in with pure delight and sees the meat and veggies chopped into perfect bites. Then the fresh, rich flavor and the vibrant colors and smells swirl together like they're filling her up from the inside out. She raises the cup, takes one sizzling sip of the broth, and boom, her face lights up with pure, satisfied contentment. Her entire body floods with joy again, and that wild, incredible rush hits her all over. Dish spots that the meat's tougher today, and she grins, because if she chews it right, that one-of-a-kind flavor finally bursts out. The moment she bites down, flavor threads whip together, twisting and locking in perfect harmony. She finally takes a bite of the potato, and it blends so perfectly with the other root veggies that the miso saltiness kicks in, sparking the sweetness like it was waiting for this moment. Hassel surges with real, unfiltered joy. She even swears potatoes, other veggies, meat, and miso team up like dancers and start a waltz inside her mouth, hitting that perfect blend of four tastes. Assel keeps going back for more of that mouth-watering soup while Dish is wrapped up in something. Then she spots it and marches straight up to the cook to ask what he's doing. He whips around to her and says, "Yeah, I can tell you why your stats suddenly jumped." Then he shoves a jug of beans right in front of Assel and tells him with a grin that these are called speedy. At first, Isle just freezes. Then, a few seconds later, she whips around to Dish and demands to know again, like she can't believe her ears. Dish doesn't even flinch and he asks if she's really heard about them. Then Assel breaks it down, speed beans, yes, the magic ones, supercharge your agility just by eating them. But they're so rare they only sprout in tiny patches of special soil, and nobody's managed to cultivate them yet. Dish listens to it all like it's nothing, then shrugs, boils the speed beans and grinds them up to whip up miso, leaving Isle staring at him in stunned silence as he blurts out, "Where did you even get that many speed beans?" Dish drags her over to the spot where he unearthed them, steering her straight into the yard behind his house, while Assel stares in pure disbelief at a whole garden packed with rows of rare beans. Isle's mouth just won't move. She's staring at the whole garden of speed beans in pure disbelief, like she can't accept what she's seeing. Shaking like crazy and drenched in cold sweat, she blurts to Dish, "Are these really all the speed beans?" Dish nods, and as he's about to spill what he knows, Isle cuts in with a shocked cry. She stares out at the field and gasps, "There are 1,000, maybe 5,000 beans out there." And she remembers the awful truth, these things are so rare they cost a fortune. That's why entire underground auction houses exist, where you can trade one or even two magic swords and walk away with a single bean like it's nothing. Hazel realizes that if she sells every bit that grows here, she'll buy an aristocrat's mansion in no time. Yet when she takes another look at those mountains of beans, she understands the real jackpot. She can help everyone get as fast as she is. And that's the kind of revolution that could actually change everything. Because then they'd finally crush most of the monsters and save countless lives. Ripping herself out of her daydream, she snaps at Dish how this even happened, and how his backyard beans grew so perfectly. Because no matter how skilled you are, she insists, you can't pull off that kind of result. She shoots him a question, how did you manage to grow them? He snaps back that the usual tricks are useless here, then drops to the ground, grabs a chunk of soil, and declares that something has been stirred right into it. Bones of monsters, he ground them himself right into the earth. Osel gasped, asking again, and Dish answered, they're packed with the remains of mana. He tells them that deep in the mountains, he once spotted beans sprouting right around a monster's skeleton. And that's exactly when the idea for this method hit him. Osel beams and says this is just too incredible. She has to tell everyone about the method, no excuses. Dish grumbles that he's a little too lazy for that, but if she's convinced, then he probably won't mind. Osel steals herself, and then it hits. Now everyone can grow thousands of speed beans, and adventurers will finally be able to level up their skills like crazy. Then it hits her, she's picturing all that mouth-watering miso on the shelves, and suddenly her thoughts snap into a clear realization. In her mind, she builds a perfect plan. Once it all clicks, she'll finally eat miso from home like it's just a normal product. No more trips into the forest, no more running after Disha, and no more seeing him ever again. She's dead set on stopping this, but Dish can't make sense of her reaction, because he has no idea what's going on in her head. He asks what she can't allow, but she cuts him off, dragging the truth into the open. Yeah, it's a crushing loss for the world, yet they still can't spill the secret of growing beans. And then Osel makes her choice. She refuses to let that happen. Every day she showed up, he kept eating miso, so she figured his whole body must have been getting a major boost. Dish insists his traits haven't shifted one bit, and Osel presses him for the why. Dish says he swaps in a different kind of bean for his miso too. Then he jabs a finger at a bean growing nearby and calls it his slow bean. Osel finally gets through to her, then the slowdown beans hit, and she gasps as they slam the speed down hard, like the exact opposite of the speed beans. She still remembers that wild joke about a merchant who thought he'd bought speed beans, only to learn the joke was on him when the opposite hit, and he went broke. Until Dish snaps her out of it by shoving a taste of slow beans into her hands. After a while, Isle and Dish slip back into the house, and Dish serves up fresh soup, slow-cooked beans steaming in every bowl. She stares at the steaming, delicious soup, and the broth is already a fierce red. The moment she catches that jaw-dropping aroma, her eyes widen, it's way stronger than the speed bean miso. So even after she's already eaten, she can't fight the pull of that smell. She snaps back to her senses right away, slaps doubt out of her mind and reminds herself, this isn't magic, it's miso made from miso beans, so of course it could mess with her condition. One of her go-to skills is insane speed, so not even a drop of soup can slow her down. But she doesn't fight it for long, soon she's digging into that soup with real delight. She swears that compared to those white beans, this one hits deeper, feels gentler on the tongue. And even though the other ingredients are exactly the same, the flavor comes out totally different. She digs into the soup with pure delight, swearing this miso hits even harder than the last one. Then that cozy, mouth-watering goodness floods through her whole body. Dish leans in and asks Isle if she likes the soup he made, and Isle lights up, telling him it's absolutely delicious. She also knows this, because miso is brewed from slow beans, her stats are dropping right now. She keeps slurping that broth like a champ, then clocks it. Her light-speed body is probably crawling back toward normal right this second. And pretty soon she's gonna turn into slow-usle, then turtleasle. With every sip of soup, she can feel herself turning into some little trinket even a turtle would outpace. So she scrambles to shut down those nasty, obsessive thoughts. She stares at the table stacked with her stats, and it all clicks. She remembers exactly what she'd decided earlier. She's going to come to the dishes again and again, so the whole method for growing speed beans has to stay locked down and never be shared. Asal knows this could help others, but she hides it all anyway, because it's for her own gain. And now, as punishment, she has to fight for all 10 people herself. She's locked in on this truth. No matter what, she'll never let herself beat her. Moments later, she brightens and asks for more soup, and Dish grabs the giant pot, insisting there's still plenty left, so she can chow down as much as she wants. No matter what happened before, on that day Osel's lightspeed charge still got shattered. Later on, Asel is on a monster hunting mission with Elizabeth and Farm when Elizabeth turns to her partner and asks if he's noticed Asel's moving slower than usual today. Pharma nods, confident she can see Asel pouring every ounce of strength into this fight, like these monsters can't possibly stand a chance. Yet they're still stuck, asking what that really means. Farm realizes this is the moment they can't hold back anymore, so they push themselves with everything they've got to get stronger. Asel says nothing. She knows Farm is dead wrong, because she's basically overcooked on slow beans, and now her speed has sunk even lower than it started. After finishing the task, Asel slipped back into the city, then headed straight to a girl named Fawn, the administrator, who was busy scrutinizing her traits. Fawn says Asel's status just shifted again. First her speed blasted up to 999, but now it's fallen, and her weight has ballooned too, leaving Asel totally unsure whether this is a blessing or a disaster. Carbania is one of Runlead's biggest powerhouses. Its influence hits like thunder. Founded in 420, this massive city, buried in the northwest of the Cemento's mainland, holds the title of the world's fourth largest city by area. Of course, this state has it all: mountains, forests, fields, and even a route to the sea, so it's still pushing forward right now, using that unbeatable location to grow. That continent runs the full cycle of the year. Every season hits in order, and people swear Carbania is the most breathtaking country in the entire world. Right here in the border town of Urbane, that's where Asal von Velen calls home. She and her crew, Elizabeth and Farm, burst into the Adventurers Guild, and right away Asel strides up to Fawn, pressing the quest materials into her hands. That adorable girl in her work uniform, fluffy ears bouncing on her head, studies the materials. Then she lights up and praises Asal, because Asal finished a job in one day that normally takes ordinary adventurers 5. Vonland runs the guild where Esal, Elizabeth, and Farm get assigned. The guild takes on monster destruction missions and also answers the citizens' personal pleas. Then they sort every job into ranks and hand it out to the right adventurers. At first, a guild was just a place to match people with the right skills. But once monster extermination requests exploded, guilds started hunting down adventurers to do the job. Soon, bounties from every corner of the country started piling into one place, and after a while it all clicked into a proper, well-oiled system. Now the guild pays the reward directly, not the customer. And that's when they cooked up a new system. To finish a task, you had to bring proof, actual pieces of the monsters. And anyone who's officially joined the guild can take on these orders. If you've been called an adventurer, it's your time to step up. They're the kind of heroes who punch through monsters and storm into dungeons no one has ever even seen before. At least that's what they swear. In the guild, the adventurers all snapped their focus to Asel, the Holy Knight. And when they saw the claws she brought back from the mission, pure excitement lit up their faces. They're stunned by the mountain of claws. Those are maned wolves' teeth, and you don't just find them, not even in small piles. Still, they guess it, an SS rank adventurer. You shouldn't expect anything less. Adventurers stuck at F rank can only stare at monster destruction missions like daydreams, until the girl beside them sighs and admits the truth. They've got to haul themselves through all kinds of jobs, from rounding up runaway pets to hunting herbs. Then one of the adventurers snaps them out of their whining, grinning that someday they'll be just as strong and badass as SS-ranked adventurers. As the cell listens to the young adventurers, it realizes something huge. You can't survive on pure heroics alone. Those ordinary jobs matter just as much. She's convinced these three aren't just adventurers. They're the kind who pull off non-stop useful feats, and honestly, they're basically heroes. Asel is an SS-rank adventurer, and the state crowns her as a holy knight, handing her serious perks, because this rank is only earned by truly outstanding people, making her status insanely rare. One of the best perks of OSL being an SS-rank adventurer is scoring the absolute dream team Fawn, the group admin who's just amazing. She lays out every task in crystal clear detail, and you can tell she's got real talent. She throws herself into helping Asel and her whole crew, no hesitation, and she's always ready to jump in for any other adventurers who need a hand. Frame's weird change caught her attention. She had been painfully quiet for ages, but lately she suddenly lit up and started acting way more cheerful. Fram tells you she was totally stunned at first by how huge the gap was between her and Asal's skills. Then she realized Asal hasn't just improved, she's been grinding herself to the limit lately, even on the simplest missions. Fram keeps going, saying she loves the freedom she gets in battle and swears by the new silent Assi. Then she slips into silence and turns away. Asel wants to slam the truth out right now, say it's all the slow bean's fault and that she couldn't resist the temptation. But if she talks, it's over, so she shuts her mouth and stays silent. Fawn slips up to Asel and whispers that he needs to know. Has her agility really come back to normal or not? Asel nods in agreement but begs Vaughn not to spill it to Fram, and Vaughn, eyeing Fram's bright, bubbling joy, admits it's best they keep things exactly as they are. Asel tells Fawn that everything that's happened to her just came down that way, and none of it is something she regrets. Plus, she's convinced there's nothing wrong with who she is or how she's built. Fawn blurts out what happened. Because Osel's agility isn't the only thing that's changed, Osel shoots her a look away, cheeks burning, and mutters out an answer like he can't stand to say it out loud. Fawn leans in and locks eyes with her, then blurts out, "Does I'll have a boyfriend?" And the girl freezes for a beat, then explodes into a terrible blush and squeals with pure embarrassment. Watching her reaction, Fun smirks like he nailed it, sure his guests are perfectly where they need to be. Asal frantically tries to swear to Fawn that none of it is true, that she's got no boyfriend at all, but Fawn shuts her down fast, her face reading this is suspicious, and she doesn't buy a single word. Fram suddenly butts in on their talk, saying Isle's been hitting the mountains nonstop lately. Then Isle goes pale and demands, "How do you even know that?" Asel tries to dodge the topic, blurting that accidents have been happening nonstop lately, but Frame cuts her off instantly, saying she's talking about the usual mountain range where people go to hunt and kill monsters. Right after those words, it hits her. She suddenly remembers they'd tried monster meet up in the mountains. Right after that, Asel snaps her mouth shut with his hand, crushing her chance to speak before a single word can escape. Fram just smiles and tells Isle there's nothing to be ashamed of at all, because she's a good girl and loving someone is perfectly fine. Asel is still firing back at Fam, insisting every single thing he said has nothing, absolutely nothing, to do with any change in her character. Right after that, she stumbles over her own words, tries to connect the dots, and insists it might be linked, but tells them not to panic. With that same dazzling smile, Fam leans in and tells her, "I got it, I understand everything." Isle shifts her focus to Frame, then blurts, "Tell me you're still alive." Because for all this time, she's been crushing her by the neck and head, and now Frame slumps there, passed out from the pressure. A desperate Cell rushes to Fram and begs for forgiveness, desperate to snap her friend back to consciousness. Asel storms out of the Adventurers Guild after everything that's gone down, clearly furious that her friends won't correct the rumors. Like she and Dish aren't still working their way toward anything real. She snaps into a rage on the spot. Furious she can't even figure out why she thought they weren't there yet. Then she throws her head into the wall, beating herself up in pure frustration. She realizes the truth has been stalking her like crazy lately, and that's when she snaps. She can't keep ignoring her duty as an adventurer. Asel clocks that the guild is full of Fram and the fresh recruits, and suddenly she feels the weight of being their example, so she decides to shelve her Dish visits for a bit. After those thoughts hit, Asel clenches her resolve and shuts down the idea of bringing herself to the dishes for a while. Since she's a holy knight, she refuses to veer off the path she's been chosen to follow, so she's confident she can handle whatever's coming. But her confidence crumbles fast. Then the very next day, she comes to dish up again and gets served freshly made wild raven kebabs. Isle stares at that hot, fresh meat and practically lights up with joy, so excited she can't even sit still, and the dish is like a reminder that she already told everyone, "I want to eat them again." Asela lights up when Dish actually remembers her words. Then she beams and thanks him for the food like she just won. She tears off a chunk of meat, and right away, hits that familiar, mind-blowing, one-of-a-kind flavor. She insists these kebabs aren't like the ones in the city at all, because when you bite into the crow meat, it's got this weird, elastic chew. Asel keeps chowing down on that mouth-watering shashlik, and he basically swears the raven meat's elasticity proves it's anything but tough, soft, springy, and perfectly chewed, so his mouth is flooded with rich meat juices. Azel never would have guessed that wild crows, the most ruthless kind of birds, could taste so insanely good. Asel devoured every last bite in seconds, and when she was done, all that sat there was a bare plate and a few scattered skewers. She grinned so wide she practically glowed, finally getting to feast on the raven she'd been craving for ages. After just a few seconds, it hits her. She snaps into screaming rage, furious at herself, because she'd promised she'd never come back for the dishes again. Right then, she spots Dish stuffing his stuff into this huge backpack, zipping it all up and slinging it onto his back, so Asel asks, "Are you headed somewhere?" And Dish confirms that he is. He grabs Ossel and makes him stare out the window. The cell knows trouble's coming, because even if it's just a distant mountain blazing right now, that fire can sweep through the forest and roar straight to where it's living. The cell realizes that if this keeps going, she'll never taste that delicious food again. So she snaps her mindset around and immediately decides their home is a danger too, and she can't waste even a second hesitating. She whips around to Dish, and he's chilling, totally calm and carefree, nothing like her panic. "Why aren't you freaking out?" she demands, worry spilling out of her voice. He tells Estelle, "Don't freak out, those flames are probably from fire-eating birds." But Estelle just stares because she's never heard of monsters like that in her life. The Fire Eater is a C-rank monster with pure firepower, and yeah, its name isn't just hype. These flame-swallowing birds can gulp down actual fire, they make their homes near volcanoes, and they almost never go after humans. Dish explains that when there's no flame in sight, these birds whip up their own fire, then tear into burning coals and stones to shut down their hunger. Azel hears about these monsters for the first time ever, and it hits her like a thunderclap. She realizes it doesn't matter if a monster started the fire. She can't turn a blind eye, because if Dish is right, that blaze is going to chew through everything even faster. She tells him that if nobody steps in, these monsters are going to start hurting people, and she can't stand by and walk away. Azel yanks her sword from the sheath and vows she'll wipe out the Fire Eater. Then Dish fires back, "Are you sure?" Azel locks in, saying she has to do it to save people. Right now, Juan marches up to Isle, her smile lights up, because this has to mean he's choosing to go with her, and that means they can take on anything together. But the moment she stares at him, she sees it, pure excitement and a happy grin shining through, so she turns to the wolf and asks, "Why are you drooling?" Then Dish leans in and tells Esau the wild truth: Fire Eaters taste insanely good. A jolt of shock rips through her, and in the exact same heartbeat, her stomach growls like it's already craving that next delicious dish. Dish laughs like he totally saw this coming. He even calls Estelle hilarious, but Estelle isn't laughing at all. He turns sheepish and scrambles to convince him he heard nothing and that he just showed him by accident. Dish finally stops laughing and tells Estelle, "Don't worry so much," because the truth is he's been craving those Fire Eaters for ages. He swears that if they smash that monster, they'll save everyone just like Isle dreamed, and then they'll finally get to dig into some delicious meat. Assel nods in agreement, and once it's sealed, Dish, One, and Assel lock in ready to hunt. The entire crew marches into the forest to track down the Fire Eater. Only now Assel cornered Dish and demanded, "So what's your plan?" And Dish shot back, "Don't worry, I've got one." Dish snatches up a twig and waves it like a pointer, telling everyone they need to figure out how to catch a Fire Eater first. Because in the hunt, knowing the monster's habits is the only thing that truly matters. Fire Eaters crave smoldering flames, so the first move is simple: spark a fire. And the sharp smoke scent will flood the area and pull in the bird, because to them that smell is basically dinner. They plan to dump concentrated alcohol onto the flames, turning the smoke into thick booze-soaked vapor, so that the Fire Eater gets blasted drunk on the spot just from the stench. Once the capture goes through, it's locked in, done for good, and Dish makes one thing crystal clear: don't you dare get so drunk you mess it up. Assel blurts out, "Can monsters even get drunk?" Like she can't believe she's never heard of it. Dish points out that some monsters can shrug off poison or petrification, but they're still alive, so alcohol's going to hit them all the same. Dish swears it'll work either way, and even one of the twins got drunk recently, surprising Isle more than anything. She can't believe this crazy plan will work, but Dish stays stone calm, so they stick to it and strike a fire. Suddenly, a savage cry rips through the forest. One of them snaps his muzzle up and Asseliel's just as fast, staring skyward as a figure barrels toward them overhead. Turns out she wasn't just talking, she could breathe fire. Dish yells at Estelle to scramble and hide right now. If that monster spots them, it's over. The three of them dive into the bushes and disappear. A bird dives out of the sky, then leans in and sniffs the smoky fire like it's hunting a secret. Assel notices the Fire Eater taking it slow, not even rushing to drop into the flames, and Dish snaps that she's being way too impatient. Because a real hunter lives and dies by patience, right as the Fire Eater finally steps onto the ground. Estelle steps toward the fire with ruthless caution, eyes sharp on every detail. Then she decides it's finally time to strike from the shadows, only for Dish to stop her cold. He snaps that it's not time, yet Assel can't believe he's stalling when the bird is already closing in, and Dish pushes her to watch like a hawk, warning that the alcohol is about to kick in any second. Estelle keeps her eyes locked on the bird and then, surprise, the stink of alcohol crawls right up to them too. Suddenly, she spots the Fire Eater at last, dropping its beak straight into the flames. He drags his beak across the flames for a stretch, then suddenly freezes in place, and Isle clocks it instantly. The Fire Eater stays frozen for a few heartbeats, then snaps its beak up and lets out a loud, awkward hiccup, Asel's jaw drops in shock as she whispers to Dish, still refusing to believe that the fire eater actually just hiccuped. The little bird jerks its head in confusion, then bursts its wings wide. Asel's stomach drops because she fears the fire eater is about to take off. But Dish shoots her down and says, "Don't worry, that monster's already hammered." To Azel, it's just a normal chicken strut, but Dish grins and says this is the exact moment to strike. Next thing you know, Dish yanked hard to the side. Asel was writhing in pain and screaming Dish's name, and Dish snapped his head over and snatched a bottle of liquid. He hurled the bottle at the nervous little bird, then it shattered midair and the pieces splatted straight onto it. Asel was stunned. First it hit like a beast of a drink, and now it turned into plain water. Dish believes that for a fire monster, water is pure poison, and for a drunken eater, it's like a cold dump of snow right on the head. He's convinced it totally worked, but he still can't figure out the real secret behind it. Asel snapped and called out to him, telling him to stop, because no matter how much water he gets dumped on, it won't kill him, and that's exactly when she got thrown for a loop. Asel figured the bird's reaction had turned way too flat, and she told her, if these monsters chow down on fire, then their bodies must be blistering hot inside. She'd heard that when your body temperature drops, your senses go blurry and your movements slow down, so she couldn't believe Dish had planned it that carefully. And then right then, Dish launched into the bird. Asel practically screamed, "Great job, for real." She stared at Dish and realized he knew every tiny detail about monsters, like he'd seen them before. Asel spotted smoke in the air and caught screams ripping through the chaos. A whole flock of birds suddenly poured into the sky. Asel couldn't figure out why they'd all swarmed here, and Dish told him the truth. These birds could smell the sweet, smoky scent in the air, and the smoke had already raced way out ahead. Asel snapped that Dish was way too calm. There was no way you could handle a number that huge. Dish shot back that he'd only laid the trap. He was out hunting, so there was no way they'd snare that bird unless it was set up just right. He pointed to the dish called Asel and pushed like, "So you're here for that, right?" Asel flat out said the dish was perfectly right. Juan isn't just watching, he's ready to jump in and help them too. Asel braced for the toughest fight of her life, but then shockingly confidence slammed into her like, "I'm winning this." Then the girl yanked out her sword and snapped at the birds to strike, if they wanted a tasty ride straight into the chopping block. The girl bolted forward to strike first. After a while, Aquel gasped for breath, chest pounding like he'd been running for his life. She basked in her own strength, then blew open the room with the combined power of both of them. Dish froze. He thought she was just going to scare the birds off, but she chopped every single one up. And then Asel snapped, asking Dish if the ingredients were all right. Dish said all the pieces were still perfect, so yeah, everything's intact and nothing's wrong. If everything got wrecked, the meat would be trash anyway. Asel admitted she felt a bit awkward, then asked why any other meat would be ruined too. Dish warned that if you smash the insides, everything spills out and you can toss it immediately. He told everyone this battle felt endless, but Oslo and Juan were shining the whole time. In most long wars, your focus slips and your attacks turn sloppy, yet they didn't. Asel shot back that without that way she'd never become a holy knight, and the girl immediately demanded, "Let's eat faster." Dish agreed, then snapped that he couldn't cook every bird. Monster meat rots fast, so he'd only have time to slice up a few. Asel froze in shock. Dish told her not to sweat it. There'd be plenty of meat for the girl to stuff herself. After a while, the dish finally kicked into full cooking mode and started sizzling. Asel couldn't believe he was cooking it right away. Dish snapped that fire eaters already run super hot. So the moment you start slicing, you're basically inviting burns, which is why you've got to cool the meat first. If you blast the meat with too much heat too fast, it'll shrink down and turn tough. In this situation, once the meat's changed, there's no flipping it back to the way it was before. Once the meat hits about human body temperature, yank the bird out of the water and start ripping the feathers off. Asel froze in shock because the bird was blazing red, like it had been forged from pure fire. Then the pan sizzled to life and the dish started cooking. Dish urged the guys to go for it. A girl asked about spices, but Dish shrugged and said the meat didn't need them. Then she went in for a taste and started chewing like it was the best thing she'd ever had. The next second, she burst into an ecstatic scream. He swore the meat hits like fire, elastic, weirdly soft, and super juicy. So the moment you bite in, your mouth floods with meat juice and spice. She could taste the meat's heat, then right after, a sweet burst hit her tongue. Dish grinned and told them, "Wait a bit, I'm gonna whip up something even tastier." Juan and Asel just sat there, waiting for their moment to hit. The dish hits the heat, and the chef starts coating it in potato flour like a crispy, golden secret weapon. Then he flung it into the frying pan, bam, and the boys caught that heavenly sizzle and the mouthwatering smell rising fast. The dish looked straight up irresistible. He loaded the chicken in a dish, then drowned it in batter like he meant business. They agreed to chow down with the fire eater. They were stunned by the weirdly perfect bite, meat that came out crazily crispy on the outside, but stayed tender and soft inside, with potato coating so crunchy it practically crackled. That first crisp crunch doesn't last. It shatters into a thick, juicy bite of meat so dense it practically clings to your teeth. They devoured every last bite. Asal never expected the fire eaters to taste that damn good. Then Dish finally clocked it. Esal didn't even know the basics. Monster's blood is packed with mana. Because the fire eater is drenched in the fire element, the meat hits spicy and burns your tongue. Asal had no clue that those differences even existed. Maybe even the Royal Library's sages don't know it, but Dish, this feels like everyday stuff to him. Dish Mashon is a total mystery. This young man's secrets feel impossible to pin down. Sooner or later, inside the Adventurers Guild, Asal finally grabbed a helmet and decided to wear it. Asal whips around, her lips already battered from that brutal meat, and she snaps on a helmet to cover the damage. Carol Harness, a Beast Race girl, had her world turned upside down when she spotted something weird. And it didn't just grab her attention, it directly involved her mistress, the Knight Isel. About 3 years ago, she and Carol crossed paths the day her parents were wiped out in an accident caused by a monster. Right then, Isle burst onto the scene and risked everything to yank the little girl out of danger. So yeah, she owed her life to you. And after all that, Osel still left her standing there completely alone, because he gave her a home where she could live for a long time and always come back to. After that, she moved into her mansion as the maid and threw herself into the job, cooking up delicious food to keep her mistress taken care of. Because as an adventurer, she was slammed with missions and couldn't slow down. That's how Carol finally clocked it. Once they hit a certain point, her mistress started sighing at every meal, then kept sighing off into the distance, and even let those heavy sighs spill during her medicinal bath. Harness initially blamed the meal she'd cooked, but once she ran the whole situation through in her head, she tossed that idea aside. Something totally different had to be going on. Namely, love, and the girl is sure of it. She's convinced Asal has fallen for someone because he keeps drifting toward Mount Kumov again and again, even if he doesn't have the nerve to take that next step. So Carol flashed a bright, inspired look in those sparkling eyes, then declared basically that all her work as a mistress was pushing the dating couple's relationship forward. Later up in the mountains, the maid's stomach rumbled with hunger as she replayed her own recent urges, and then it hit her. She'd climbed all the way here with zero idea where the young man lived, the very one Isle kept visiting. Meanwhile, Carol couldn't stop wondering why that guy was stuck in the forest when plenty of cities existed, and as she followed the path, a brutal fear hit her. If a monster came hunting while she was weak and hungry, she wouldn't stand a chance. But she wasn't about to fold that fast. Harness clenched her resolve and swore with total confidence that she had asterisk to see her mistress's lover and would track him down for real. Then just a heartbeat later, the maid was sprawled on the floor, her stomach roaring so loud it basically begged for food. The girl froze until it hit her. She still had to find a moment to go back and cook dinner. Right then, Harness hit the breaking point. She shut her eyes, begged her mistress for forgiveness in her mind, and feared she'd never be able to help again. A creeping animal-shaped shadow closed in on her, and in her panicked eyes it looked like a monster. Then her strength snapped and she blacked out. Carol finally stirred awake on a shaky, improvised bed, and memory hit her like a wave. How she got swallowed by the forest, got turned around, and then blacked out so hard she couldn't remember where she was anymore. Then Carol spotted the newest monster right in front of her, locked eyes, staring her down so hard she couldn't even understand how she was still alive. Until now. As the beast lunged toward the girl's face, panic hit, because she couldn't even run. The same heavy paralysis pinned her in place. Then the creature only licked Carol's face, and that quick, filthy touch left her stunned. Right after that, Dishmekin snapped awake, realized it, and told his guest to hold on for a bit, because he was about to start cooking. Curl clocked that the guy looked around her age and figured, yeah, it was him who'd saved her. The girl shot back a polite refusal right away. After all, he'd already saved her from death's doorstep, and she couldn't bring herself to accept a bite from him when her life was still in his hands. Then in the very next second, her stomach erupted into a non-stop, shaking rumble louder and louder, while she kept refusing the food they offered, trapped in days of hunger. Dish swore he'd been purring like crazy the whole time she was out cold, then begged her not to dig in on her choice, because he and his pet hadn't eaten yet. After all that embarrassment, the girl finally nodded and accepted their hospitality. Then she caught the hero tending the fire, cooking their future meal. She spotted the guy crouched by the flames, waving black sticks over the fire as he worked. At least from the outside, they looked exactly like bamboo. Then the girl stepped up and introduced herself, and the hero shot back with his name, plus his partner's, right when his pet wolf burst in, winning the moment. After she finally learned her savior's name, the girl lit up and thanked him for everything, then offered to help in return while the food was already waiting, and he told her, "Don't you worry, I've got it covered." At that moment, sizzling black sticks started to weep with juice at the tips, so the young man grabbed them and pulled them from the fire at exactly the right time. When the guy cracked them open, steaming bursts shot out of the sticks and the dish itself literally glittered, so Carol froze in shock, staring at what sat in front of her. After Carol took one quick bite of the food cooked right over the fire, her eyes widened. Because it was unlike anything she'd ever tasted, something she'd never seen before. The first thing that hit her was how this looked almost like boiled barley and rice. Then she blinked, because she'd never seen barley this blindingly white. And if those grains had rounded up like they were supposed to, they wouldn't look oblong anymore. So yeah, it would have been obvious we weren't eating plain barley and rice, but something else entirely. Curious about this weird little dish, Harness finally leaned in and begged the hero to taste even one tiny bite of his dinner. Honestly, the hero had no problem with it at all. Clutching two chopsticks like they were sacred, the girl took a slow, trembling bite of the just-made food. Afterward, she couldn't believe how delicious it was. Every time she moved, the sweetness kept bursting out, and that elastic, bouncy texture felt so good on her skin. With his kitchen buzzing from the compliments, Dish grinned and told his guest, "Don't get too comfy, this isn't even done yet," then demanded they wait just a little longer until everything was fully finished. Right then, she froze in confusion, because at her level, the dish was already dangerously good, and she couldn't wrap her head around how anyone could make it even better. Carol didn't trust that young man for a second, so she grilled him about the white grains in the dish, making it clear they weren't barley at all, because they looked wider and more oval. Dish just stared back unshaken, insisting those were Madaraj seeds. Then Carol heard it and went pale so fast she spat out the food in her mouth. Yeah, Madaraj was a deadly poison plant. Eat too much and you'd get sick fast or straight up die, so everybody with a brain avoided it. Tears streaking her face, the girl seethed that Dish had fed her seeds from poisonous grass, until he just told Carol not to panic, insisting the poison was locked mostly in the roots and stem, and he'd only given her the seeds. But Harness didn't even get to finish her outrage, because she couldn't possibly know this. She wasn't some farmer's daughter, and she figured if the plant was poisonous, then the fruit and even the seeds had to be poisoned too. Still, the hero didn't snap. He spoke calmly, patiently explaining that the poison could be there in tiny traces, but it'd be so minuscule it couldn't possibly harm her. Still, the girl wouldn't stop frowning, until the young man cut in, swearing that he'd doused the grains in holy water so thoroughly the poison got washed out of every single seed. Even after she cooled off about the poison, the maid still looked absolutely shocked. Because this time, a man had just used holy water to rinse food like it was nothing. Holy water wasn't just holy talk. It was used to wash food so it was safe to eat later, and people even used the same method to clean meat and vegetables. But Carol didn't buy the idea at all. He doubted it could ever work on the poisonous herb's own seeds, and he couldn't even figure out where that guy learned to cook it like that, just so he could use it later. She quizzed the young man about it, stunned that she'd never heard of anyone making Madaraj before. But Dish only shrugged and said nobody taught him. He'd figured it out all on his own. Still stunned by what she'd just heard, the maid blurted out, "Where did you even get that holy water?" Because she couldn't imagine the hero finding it anywhere out in the mountain forest depths, and when the young man pulled out a whole jug, it shocked Harns even more. He even told her that sometimes spirits popped in for lunch, and out of gratitude, they left him the very same holy water. Yet even that still stunned Carol. She could barely stomach it. Spirits were actually showing up to dine with him, and since she'd never seen a single one herself, she couldn't wrap her head around beings that high choosing him. Then Dish jabbed a finger at his pet and declared, "Juan is a divine beast." And the maid froze in utter shock because she knew exactly what creatures at that level were like. Then she tried to boil it all down. Yep, the guy was the master of a divine beast, and even spirits came to share his dinner. But it only made Carol's head spin worse, like the poison had gotten to her. With every other thought pushed out, Harness figured she didn't need to stress about the poison. If the food was truly poisoned, she'd have been doubled over with a stomach ache by now. But then she felt this warm, pleasant spark in her stomach, like her insides were cheering, and her whole body suddenly turned light as air. Just moments later, Dish yanked a finished dish from the fire, still blistering hot, reeking of irresistible goodness. So even Carol, who knew it was made from a poisonous plant, couldn't stop herself from inhaling that amazing scent. Once she finally caved, Harness realized he couldn't keep acting this way anymore, so he swallowed his pride, apologized for everything he'd said about the poison earlier, and begged to get a bite of the dish too. He was all in because the cooking was finally done, so he whipped up a special dish, Dishamakona Piku Madaraj with miso. When the girl blinked in shock at the name, the young man grinned and told her he'd invented it himself, because the dish looked just like the tip of a spear, and even his pet and guest vouched for that. Right after that, the girl dove in, craving the food she'd just watched cook, then blew on the top to cool it off fresh from the fire, and finally took her bite straight from the stick. Carol burst out in pure joy, shouting that the taste in her mouth was absolutely delicious, and her shout echoed wild across the mountains. Harness also spotted that the Madaraj grass was cooked until it dried out completely, crispy, crunchy, and all moisture gone, so the whole dish came out even more refined. Even with all the chaos around it, it stayed just as stretchy as before, and once the food got fried, that sweet flavor popped even harder than ever. According to the girl, the paste, miso, somehow poured its magic into the dish, giving it that mouth-watering flavor she could clearly taste. It matched the main flavor perfectly, pushing it forward without drowning out the original sweetness, while the fried crust's bitterness hit even harder. That deadly herb somehow delivers a shock of unreal sweetness, and the miso hits with a deep, moderately salty punch together. They nail the effect. This sealed it for Harness. There was no way this could have been a better mix of ingredients, so she practically shouted that the dish was unbelievably delicious. Soon the plates were wiped clean, and after a quick pause the maid lit up and blurted, asking how the hero even dreamed up this cooking style, and how he got that level of skill. But Dish snapped back that he'd had zero skill this whole time, leaving the girl totally stunned. Then he even doubled down, admitting he wasn't just bad, he was a level 0 cook. When Carol tried to bring up what she knew about the guy, a bone-chilling scream tore out of the deep forest. Ossel was shouting her subordinate's name in full panic, and Carol couldn't ignore it because the moment she heard that voice, she instantly recognized her mistress. The adventurer who showed up then shot up high over the forest, dove straight at Carol, and landed hard with a heavy thud untarnished. But it still rattled her and sparked a quick jolt of pain. But Isle, tears spilling down her face, finally found her maid after searching everywhere for what felt like forever. She burst out an apology on the spot, then reassured her, "I'm okay." Carol said a young man had saved her and pointed him out, and Isle spun around to thank him, until she saw his face and instantly recognized Disha, who rushed over and greeted her right away. Harness stared in shock because the couple looked way too familiar, and then it clicked in her head. That was why her mistress had been eating so badly lately and rushing up to the mountains again and again. Right then she was ready to demand answers, why her mistress dragged herself up these mountains and what was up with her new lover. But her mistress snapped her silence so fast that she never got the chance to say a word. Estelle watched the hero dig into something delicious again, and even though it was clearly someone else's portion, she snapped that the guy probably cooked a whole feast. So she grabbed at least one, certain nothing bad would happen. Then she cracked a smile at the guy's mouth-watering cooking, and Carol instantly clocked it. Asal had never reacted this sharply and vividly to any meal she'd made. So Harness snapped her gaze at Dish, snarled that she was declaring war and swore they'd be rivals from that day forward, while everyone else, even the hero, just stared at her, utterly confused. Carol kept pressing forward, dead set on winning no matter what, and clawing back her mistress's respect, while Estelle and Dish exchanged worried looks, wondering if the girl and her maid had a falling out. After announcing it, Carol clenched her resolve, snapped into action, and right before the competition, she burst out of the forest and tore into training on the way to her goal. Staring at her, Estelle jerked in shock at how suddenly she moved, and when he saw where she was headed, he snapped, "Stop, turn back," because a cliff with a brutal drop lay right in her path. After everything that just happened, a wild cry burst out of Isle's house. Disha was about to be invited over, and the hostess herself couldn't believe it. But Carol stood her ground, saying he'd been a huge help to them lately, and that they absolutely had to thank him. But Harness didn't just want any task. She wanted the chance to prove who could cook for Mrs. Isle herself, so she straightened everything out and made sure nothing was left in the dark. Later, inside one of those rooms, plates lined the table, exquisitely made dishes so dazzling they practically sparkled in the light. Carol pulled up a chair, flashed a sly grin, and invited him to dig in, leaving the protagonist completely stunned. Right after the young man snatched a bite, the maid leaned in and asked, "So, how's it taste?" Dish was absolutely over the moon from that insanely delicious food, and Carol just smiled like, "Yeah, I made it with my own hands." After that, Dish zeroed in on the corn soup, couldn't stop staring at it like it was something brand new, and he realized this was the first time he'd ever tried a chilled soup. Hearing that, the maid beamed and said, "First, I simmer the corn with the kernels, because that sweet flavor isn't just in the bites, it lives in the cob too, and it soaks into the soup and makes every spoon taste deeper." Once Dish got the scoop on how to make this soup, he couldn't believe it, so he swore he'd try it himself someday, and when he did, the duck meat came out insanely tender. He just had to rave about how perfectly it was cooked, then demanded to know the sauce, because that sharp bitterness hit exactly right for him, and he even learned from one of Isle's servants that they stir in a little beer to make it. Hearing that, the hero froze in shock, then instantly went back for another taste to prove his theory. He even dipped a finger into the sauce and sampled it. Right after that, the young man tasted beer's sweet and bitter punch spread across his mouth. Then he realized it wasn't just the beer, like something else was secretly playing a part too. But this resourceful level 0 chef, armed with a little know-how, spotted the recipe at once. Onions, bone meal, and garlic were all in there. He figured that if he simmered all of it together, the bone meal saltiness he'd snagged after his little successful scheme would hit the perfect balance against the sweet punch of the onions and garlic. So Dish tasted a balanced sweetness with just a hint of bitterness, nothing strong enough to drown the duck, then basically realized there was no better combo to make that duck flavor really shine. Right after he finished Carol's dish, the hungry cook practically jumped up and said, "I need to make something like this ASAP." He praised it as crazy tasty and couldn't believe how generously she went on the sauce. It was straight up amazing. As a servant bowed and thanked him for the praise, Asal's face lit up. Because if the dish pleased everyone, then all of this trouble had been worth it. The guy who spotted her stared for a second, then his eyes widened. She looked totally different now, and he muttered that in that moment she looked just like a real aristocrat. Hearing that, the girl blushed hard, but Carol's face soured like the hero's compliment deserved way better words. Dish muttered to himself, smug and loud enough to sting the maid behind him, claiming that clothes made a person look incredible, and insisting with total confidence that it was the best kind of compliment. But Isle told her maid to chill, because the young man had only been trying to flatter her. So the guy backed up her words and even added that her look fit her perfectly. When she heard that compliment, embarrassment hit her instantly, and Dish couldn't help but stare, wondering why her face turned scorching red. Right then, Wu's joy blared through his voice, and he couldn't help but speak up, snatching everyone's attention straight onto himself. But Carol stared at his plate, the dish she'd cooked, and saw it hadn't even been touched, still sitting there perfectly untouched. The maid couldn't figure out why the beast snapped at her food, but the dish practically begged forgiveness on the spot. He also swore it wasn't like that. He only ate what the person he loved with his whole heart prepared, but the girl finally understood the truth. The divine beast didn't trust her at all. Right after that, the hero and his pet exchanged a quick word, and Dish jumped at the chance to ask Carol if he could use their kitchen. She didn't mind, but the look on her face screamed that she was about to say something else. She got cut off by Isle, who wouldn't stop grilling him about his cooking plans. Then the guy nodded and confirmed it was real, even hauling ingredients along with him. After a while, the young man slipped into the estate's kitchen, rolled up his sleeves, and started cooking like he meant it. Right before I kicked things off, I had to stop and stare. This place had a kitchen so massive it even boasted 4 ovens. Dish figured it was normal for Isle. The way she kept chowing down didn't shock him anymore, except the girl herself, who flat out denied the claim he'd made earlier. Carol said you need multiple ovens just to juggle several dishes at once, and then she leaned in her mistress barely ate anything. After taking it all in, Dish grabbed the chance and decided to start cooking something wild, something Isle couldn't wait to taste. Then the guy shoved the cauldron onto the fire and cooked beneath the crackling coals, while Carol leaned in, all set to find out exactly what he'd make. Dish was cooking up bone crackers, and the girls nearly fell over when they heard it because they'd never imagined something like that could even be eaten. And then that guy hit them with the wild truth. Carol even sprinkles bone dust in her cooking, and he swore the bones have their own distinct flavor. The servant who'd made the sauce before chimed in, saying the bones really did taste like something just faintly, and that they were without a doubt used in the cooking. So they fried those little fish with their bones until every single bone went crunchy. Then you could pop the whole thing in your mouth, and that unique flavor was exactly what Asal was dying to taste. Then the servant jumped in to help the boy ready the oil, but the boy waved him off, saying he'd already had everything set up ahead of time. He yanked a little improvised container out of his prepared bag, undid the knot at the neck, and poured the liquid straight into the cauldron. Carol blinked in confusion as the oil he poured came out way too runny, even though no one had lit the fire yet, and it even smelled way better than the usual stuff. Asal grinned so hard she could barely contain it, practically savoring the oil's amazing scent like it was pure magic. Then the maid got curious about that oil's origin, and discovered Dish was using oil scraped from the fire sacks of dragon bats. Darank monsters were fire-natured, and from the same kind of bats that hunted by night, they could unleash blazing breath to torch entire swarms of insects for an easy kill. Carol heard that and her jaw dropped, because this guy was actually planning to cook with monsters. She reminded them that you don't eat monsters. End of story. Though of course some people break the rule, like those humans who hunt monster meat and treat it like a luxury delicacy. The second servant also called it out. Yeah, the dragon bats had an oil-storing organ, but he swore it wasn't worth a single bite. As soon as Dish heard all of it, he just laughed along with his pet, while the maid seethed, convinced not a single bit of this was funny. But the hero's mind snapped back to his first meeting with Asal. Her face had the exact same reaction as theirs. Then she even chimed in that monsters usually aren't eaten, swearing it was totally normal to feel that way about something like this. Asal also said she'd tried a dish made from monsters, and warned that the moment a monster is defeated, its carcass starts rotting almost right away. Then the girl, mouth-watering, passed along what she'd learned from Dash. Cook that meat before it turns, while it's still raw, and it'll come out ridiculously tasty. Instead of defending himself, the hero told them, just try it once, swore the tiny amount of oil was top grade, and most importantly, it smelled incredible, unlike the cheap oil that never could. Everyone in the room smelled it too, and once they realized that oil could somehow stink that horribly, they all agreed it was flat out impossible. Instead of the usual little fish, Dish went off script and cooked with something wild, dragon bat wings. The hero bragged that those wings weren't just packed with copies in all sizes. They even had meat inside, and the real win was how long that monster meat could last, making it perfect as a souvenir. So he chopped the wings into bite-sized pieces, tossed them on the heat to cook, then sprinkled in a little salt. The oil in that cauldron roared and bubbled nonstop, popping into tiny explosions every second, and everyone there couldn't ignore it. Their ears caught that fierce sizzling like the wild, stormy applause when a crowd's favorite performer hits the stage. He'd watch for that unmistakable sizzle, the same sound that told him the oil was ready, then pull the pieces out the moment they turned a rich amber color. The hero burst out that his secret special, Disha Makona the dragon bone crackers, was finally ready to serve. While Ussel breathed in the glorious scents coming off the finished dish, Carol froze, repulsed by the whole thing, and snapped that Ussel shouldn't trust the smell or the color because it wasn't food at all but bones, and even monsters wouldn't want it, and she refused to hand it to her mistress. But Ussel snapped that her maid was dead wrong. Dish had already fed her monster meals before, and they were crazy tasty without once poisoning her. So the adventurer, totally trusting the kid and his cooking, jumped in. Then boom, a loud crunch cracked the air. Carol wasn't the only one who heard that sound. Everyone else in the room caught it too, so even the second servant gave in and tasted the dish, while Asal and the other guy were already tearing into them, stuffing their faces without pausing. Every single person who dared to taste those crackers couldn't stop. One bite turned into non-stop munching, while the maids just stood back, watching in stunned silence. After hesitating for what felt like forever, she finally caved and took a taste of the demon backcracker. And the shock hit so hard she went speechless, stunned to her core. Then she blurted out that the dish was absolutely delicious. And Isle immediately backed her up, praising the crackers, amazing texture, and that insanely satisfying crunch the second you bit in. Even the servant clocked that thin strip of meat clinging to the bones, and swore it made the flavor pop, giving the dish a totally different bite than the bones ever could. So the three of them got totally hooked, biting into the fire monster's kick, savoring that spot-on saltiness, and breathing in its rich, natural aroma until the whole dish never once felt bland. Carol paused mid-step, stared at the cracker in her hand, and the moment hit her. She couldn't help but call it absolutely incredible. What really floored her wasn't the recipe, it was the cook. She never would have guessed he could pull off monster oil, yet Dish just shrugged like it was no big deal, and that made her stare in disbelief. He told me that at first he had absolutely nothing, so he just roamed the mountains, surviving monsters everywhere, until he finally snapped and decided he'd achieve more. So there was no choice left, he had to feed on the monsters. Carol praised his tenacity like she was about to bow on the spot, saying that the dish he served came from pure dedication to his beloved work. The maid even studied herself, and without a second thought, she only cared about her cooking, selfishly chasing her own victory. Carol snapped into despair, shoulders slumping as the weight of it crushed her, until the second Asal servant stepped in, slid a hand to her shoulder, and reminded her she still had something only she could do. While the girl kept doubting herself, the servant leaned in and urged his mistress to sip something, like beer, saying it would pair perfectly with the salty dish. Isle couldn't stop herself. She told her maid, practically glowing, that this idea was pure genius and she couldn't wait to eat cheese together. Carol blinked in surprise and the adventurer leaned in to Dish, since he'd zeroed in on the cheese, saying she absolutely loved it and that it paired perfectly with alcohol too. A thrilled cell assistant shouted that her underling whipped up the most unreal cheese, and the level 0 chef's jaw dropped, so he demanded a taste too. Carol stood frozen, clueless about what was going on. Then she locked eyes with the guy who'd pitched the idea, caught his warm, friendly smile, and burst into tears of joy as she announced she'd serve this exact cheese right to the table. After slipping into another room, the girl paused, then remembered her own cooking and snapped to the truth. While she'd been watching everyone else and fighting to win, she'd forgotten what mattered most. The maid yanked open the cupboard and pulled out a smooth hunk of cheese, and yeah, she hated to admit it, but that recent meeting really taught her something as she sliced it. When Carol set it on the plate, pride hit her like a wave, like she'd just leveled up as a cook. Then she carried the cheese to her mistress's table with fire in her heart, determined to keep pushing for Isle. Later, in a wrecked stretch of land where dark magic ruled, Assel and a band of adventurers finally pushed up to a cemetery that looked pitch black even under noon, because they'd come to finish their job. The priestess in the group leaned in and said, "Long ago, a village stood right here. Then one wild magical disaster hit and it got erased from the map forever." Even more of the group chimed in, local bodies that were buried still twitched, because the soil was still leaking the last sparks of magic. Osel realized the corpses weren't just dead. They turned into ghosts, and now the adventurer had to hunt down and wipe out every last undead soul. Dish was the last one in their crew, and he smiled like he already had a recipe. He was sure he could whip up something tasty from the undead, yet the rest scoffed, convinced a ghost couldn't possibly be turned into a meal. The adventurers braced for something wild because Dish was riding with them, but when the monsters showed up, they weren't the same as that bear they'd beaten back then. Assel said, "With all respect, I don't think you'll cook a single thing from the undead. Those things are ghosts, not food." But the hero refused to quit, because if he started out believing nothing would ever work, that mindset would lead straight to disaster, even if he couldn't actually eat those ghosts. She gave in to his plan, then begged him not to leave, because the area was deadly, only to spot someone coming in fast and realize he was way too close. But the moment she spun around, she locked eyes with a ghost's horrifying face, staring straight into her. The group got hit with a shock. Ghost just appeared asterisk. A shadowy wraith whose ghostly body shrugged off every physical attack, yet crumbled under light, haunting cursed cemeteries and ancient battlefields like he owned the dead. The priestess blurted that a ghost had surfaced, and then she pointed out the terrifying truth. It wasn't wandering on its own, someone was puppeteering it from far away, and that someone was a necromancer hiding out right there in the shadows. Assel shouted for everyone to come together, and a massive crowd of ghosts, faces of every kind, started pouring into the area. Dish and his divine beast clocked every undead body in sight and let out a heavy sigh, admitting the ghosts were so inedible that it was a joke, while Assel blinked in shock, stunned that the only thing they cared about was how they tasted. One of the girls snapped. She couldn't take those ghosts creeping up on her and then declared she'd make them regret it, igniting the flames in her glove. She blasted a ghost straight with a stream of fire, and in the blink of an eye she struck him down with lightning, while the priestess kept praying, cleansing every ghost soul caught in the spell's range. Watching the magic explode in action, Dish couldn't believe what he was seeing. Skills blazing, flames roaring, and holy healing flooding the battlefield. At that exact moment, Isle let out a blood-curdling scream to warn the hero. Something was charging from behind, a ghost rushing in to strike. The girl swung a brutal chopping strike at the ghost, but her lightspeed skill hit like a punchline, freezing the motion without any real element, so the blade just wouldn't bite. While the swordswoman's strike missed, the monster barreled past it and sprinted straight toward Assel's screaming cries. Then bam, a fluffy tail shoved the ghost out of the way, and it vanished into thin air the instant it got launched flying. Assel, terrified for Dish's life, couldn't believe what hit next. While the saint spun the rumors about divine beasts carrying a holy power so intense, the proof landed and it confirmed one thing. The divine beast was right in the middle of it all. Assel replayed it in her head and with a heavy heart admitted the cruel truth. Her skill couldn't touch a thing, so she was basically helpless against those incorporeal monsters. But Dish grabbed her attention, told her not to fall apart, and swore he knew exactly how strong she really was. The girl froze, then admitted he was right. This was all a monster problem, not something that could touch her real strength. Then right behind them, a terrifying voice roared, mocking the adventurer's strength and swearing they'd never beat him. When Oslo glanced back, the monster in front of her turned out to be a skeleton mage, A+ rank, drenched in the element of darkness. So powerful that he could boss other monsters around like puppets and unleash devastating spells. The very next second, he declared he'd personally take on the people right in front of him, and Osel could barely process the sight of a skeleton mage standing there. They had no clue where that demon crawled from in these lands, but they sure remembered the warnings they'd gotten before. Vaughn blurted out that something felt seriously wrong with the mission. This wasn't a simple ghost exorcism at all, and warned them to stay sharp, and that's when they finally figured out the demon behind it was the one that triggered her premonition. The group remembered this. Demons were wickedly smart, and their power could square off with lower dragons. So this skeleton mage ahead of them was so lethal that only A-rank fighters and up were allowed to take him down. The priestess finally admitted they had to handle him with care. Then Assel shouted the order and everyone surged to attack the demon. The group snapped their flame and holy healing into action, hurling one roaring blast after another, until it slammed into the target and detonated into a massive explosion. Right as the boys prayed they'd finally landed some damage, Osel snapped their focus to the monster that didn't just fight back. It cranked up an elemental defense. Right then, the lightning speed user snapped her comrades' attention and screamed at them to dodge the attack roaring down from the sky. Yet none of them even saw it coming. One of them snapped out of the way at the last second and shouted thanks to Osel, because the demon was finally done playing nice and just couldn't keep enduring every dodge from his enemy's strikes. Then he shot his staff over his head and launched the attack, only for it to unleash a brutal dark elemental psychic blast. Even with their defenses strong, the hit still tore through them like a storm, and that demon, right then and there, swore he'd turn every last one of them into ghosts. Just as the crew found themselves outmatched, one of them screamed a piercing howl, and it instantly wiped out the skeleton mage's dark magic. The demon didn't catch where that howl was coming from, right until Dish burst onto the battlefield, riding in on his pet. The hero spun on Assel and demanded one thing, the monster's head, so hard it even stunned the skeleton. The swordswoman immediately demanded why he'd need the demon's head, but she already knew it had a purpose, and Dish shot back that he was about to cook up something delicious with it. After a brief hush, Isle snapped out with a loud cry, promising she'd make it happen. So fired up, she practically wanted the request for herself. The skeleton mage froze in horror as her stomach rumbled again, baffled about where that awful sound was coming from this time. While even her comrades stared, shocked that it had happened at all. After she asked Dish if he had any wishes, the swordswoman snapped to the truth. He only wanted the skull, while the demon stood there totally baffled, like what were they even planning? In the very next instant, Asal moved like lightning, cutting the monster's head clean off with razor precision and a furious hunger to devour it. After that, the severed skeleton's skull ricocheted across the ground in a wild bounce fest before dropping straight into the hero's hands. The demon was still breathing when it snarled at the guy to let it go, so he clocked that vitality on a skeleton and snapped, "Don't you twitch," before he strapped it down with tape. The bound skull strained to speak, but all it could manage was helpless silence. Then Osel snapped Dish's attention to the chaos nearby. Without its head, the magician's skeleton body couldn't even face the world anymore, and all its grand power crumbled into nothing. Once the other two saw that performance, it hit them instantly. This was their shot. They both decided they'd finally cover the bill, kicked on the flame and the linked healing, warned it might sting a bit, and told each other to hold on tight and stay patient. Asel and Dish leaned back on the sidelines, staring as horrifying screams and brutal noises tore through the skeleton's body, because a couple of people were really putting in the work. All that was left were ashes. Then Asel finally admitted they pulled off the mission. Then the girl snapped a question to the hero. What was he planning to do with the demon's skull, helplessly tied down in his hands? When the young man said the skull was bone, Isle snapped back that he'd make crackers again, until Dish cut in and said those treats were only ever made from small bones. While the others hesitated, Asel didn't. She trusted Dish so hard that if he said the skeleton was edible, then it was. Right then, the demons snapped their focus onto him, boasting he'd shut them up, while somehow they were actually weighing the idea of eating him. The crew just stared, because he was actually talking again, even with only his head left, and that stubborn refusal to quit had the monster snapping like it couldn't take it anymore. Even without his body, he swore he could still wield magic, and he was dead certain he'd be the one to absorb them all. Right in the middle of his speech, something clamped down on his skull, teeth and all, and the demon begged him to cut it out to stop all of this. The rest of the crew stared as the skeleton screamed and begged, watching the skull get what it deserved. And once it was finally over, they all snapped back to reality, remembering him as a monster-level fighter and cheering the silence that followed. Dish yanked the skull from him, but the hunger gnawed at his gut. This wasn't something he could just take because it was a tool they needed. Right then, the skeleton mage seized his opening and blared that this mistake would get them killed. But the very next second, reality snapped back and pinned him to the question of whether he could do anything at all. Asel cornered Dish and asked how to cook, because she was dying to try something new. Then he told her to hold up for a moment. He told her that this round of cooking would drag on a bit, 3 days exactly. And right after that, the hero promised, "Hold up a moment, wait just a bit, and I'll serve you the greatest monster dish I've ever laid my hands on." Dishmakin himself can't top it. 3 days later at Dish's house, the watchman's place, everyone who just fought that skeleton dragged the hero in, and Osel and the rest couldn't stop thinking about Dish's cooking, begging to taste the dish made from the enemy's skull. Just as the swordswoman was staring into the soup pot, wondering whatever happened to the demon, the hero suddenly jutted his finger at the cauldron like it was the answer. A shard rose through the liquid fixed Osal with its magic eyes, and terror hit her like a lightning bolt. But it wasn't just the girl who trembled. This demon was shocked too, stunned to find his enemy here, stunned to see him in the cauldron and still breathing. But the skull didn't buy it. He swore he wasn't alive at all, and he could never forgive her for handing him this fate. Out of nowhere, a skull burst out of the cauldron and launched into the sky like it had a dark plan. But before it could do anything, one quick grab stopped it cold while the girl just stood there stunned. The divine beast kept clamping down on the skeleton's skull, and the skeleton winced and screamed about how brutal the bites were. Then Desha showed up, praising their great bond, and the demon himself immediately shot that idea down. Asel demanded to know why the hero was tossing a monster into a pot like it was boiling, but the guy just smirked and said, "Relax, I'm not cooking nightmares, I'm making broth from a magical skeleton." Hearing that, the whole group froze in terror, staring like it didn't matter as the broth churned and bubbled in the cauldron. But Asel was already itching to test it, so she grilled Dish about it, while everyone else stared like, "Wait, you're actually going to drink that?" Because they all thought it might make her sick. She knew every risk like the back of her hand, but she couldn't resist tasting Desha's cooking. So when the guy grabbed a plate of the liquid, he poured it straight into her hands and served her. Asel swallowed hard, unsure what she was about to do, then she took a sip straight from the plate. She stayed frozen and mute for a beat, then someone asked how she felt. And suddenly she erupted into giggles, trembling like something inside her finally snapped loose. Isle slid 2 plates into their hands without a word, then commanded them to taste the broth, and the boys exchanged a quick look before they each took a sip. Right after that, they basically couldn't stop praising it, what they just tasted. Absolutely delicious. At that exact moment, the skull snapped off in a rage about how delicious its broth was, until it realized the broth came from him, and it started demanding everyone bow down. But just when he started talking again, they snatched another victim, and that demon didn't have a choice anymore except to plead for forgiveness. While the adventurers dug into the magical monster's broth, they couldn't believe how insanely tasty it was. So Asil leaned in and asked the hero how he pulled off such a masterpiece. Dish remembered that broth could be brewed from basically any bones, chicken, pork, whatever you had. The skull's bone structure looked familiar, so that taste might have felt like deja vu, but nothing they'd ever tasted came close to what hit their mouths right then. But Isle totally got that bones could be boiled into broth, so she couldn't wrap her head around how the dish still managed to taste that insanely good. But the young man snapped that the skeleton mage wasn't just a demon. He was a full-on monster, stacked with magical skeleton powers, and it totally wrecked the girl's understanding. Then Dish pushed the truth harder, saying the monster would drop the second its magic ran dry, and that, for creatures like it, mana was literally the lifeline. The guy realized the demon wasn't just a shell. It was alive, which meant even in his ruined state, it still had mana. Dish said that monsters live and breathe mana, but the skeleton mage didn't fit the rule, because he wasn't built with skin, meat, or organs at all, just bones. After laying it all out, he challenged the guys. Between the monster with meat and skin and the one made of bones, which one had more mana, and could they figure it out themselves? The group instantly got what he meant. This wasn't like normal beasts where mana seeps everywhere because the demon's mana didn't spread at all. It was locked into his bones and only his bones carried it. So yeah, because there was so much mana packed in his head and skull, that skeleton mage's broth turned out insanely delicious. Acel lit up at finally learning how that delicacy was made, but one heartbeat later her mind snapped to a new worry. How in the world did Dish himself know it would work? Even the rest of the crew chimed in. This kind of monster was basically unheard of anywhere, and they all agreed Hyrule must have cooked it up long before. But the young man snapped back that it was his first time preparing a demon, and a soul flared with rage, because he had zero guarantee it would work, while the kid didn't even bat an eye, convinced everything would somehow turn out fine. The swordswoman figured Dish must be feeling the same from his own experience, but then he confessed. No, he didn't just guess. He swore he had some kind of premonition. Asil shot him a warning. Every risk has its line, and she couldn't picture a world where that broth ended up tasting bland. But the hero realized the magic of cooking is all in the risky calls. One look from the girl made her thoughts echo the same truth, because cooking is basically a brutal science of trial and error. Right then, Dish blurted that he hadn't finished the soup yet, and the whole group went wild, because they'd totally forgotten about it in the first place. Everyone in the group tossed out their wild ideas. Simmer it all together, throw it in a blazing hot pot, or even whip up risotto. But even though Dish wouldn't call the choice a bad one, he still shut down everything else and decided to cook only ramen. The boys were stunned by his choice because they couldn't forget what ramen was like. It was an East Asian noodle soup packed with noodles, meat, veggies, and savory broth. An insanely popular staple that blew up around 500 years ago and was already showing up on the menus of the hottest places. They figured this plan could be the best move for their situation, then handed the cooking over to that guy and trusted him to deliver. 3 bowls of ramen, 3 servings, had to happen, and Dish grinned as she confidently started cooking. Before he cooked a single bite, Dish yanked his hair into place with a headband, then set to work whipping up the sauce, salt and all, because this time he'd picked his move. He thought the sauce would just boost the broth, but Isle snapped back that a hit of salt would be the perfect accent. And to make it, they had to boil dried seaweed, then mix it with salt. Then the hero piled in the meat and picked the one cut his cooking partner instantly recognized, bear's shoulder. The same stuff that had powered one of his tastiest past dishes, and she couldn't wait to dig into it again. Dish tossed in lime candies plus fish sauce to punch up the flavor, then swirled in a little dragon oil for that extra kick. Then the guy let it all simmer for a while, and with that luck locked in, he charged into the next steps. So it was time for the green onions, and the yellow jellyfish too, so he grabbed his dagger and went in to slice them up. After what felt like forever, he yanked open the cauldron, and the meat was cooked to perfection, juicy, and packed with killer flavor. The moment Isle caught that amazing smell of a dish that wasn't ready yet, she practically buckled with excitement, ready to leap into the pot, but the dishes calmed her down. Then he sliced into the meat, and it actually shimmered with light, so the rest of the group snapped too, watching that perfect mix of fatty cuts, sauce, and broth. After that, one of the girls, while the others turned away and fought the urge to taste Disha's cooking, grabbed the guy's attention and demanded, "So what are you gonna do with those noodles?" After that reminder, Isle snapped and admitted she'd totally blanked on the noodles. Yet Dish was already on it, explaining that he's usually all about wheat flour, but today he decided to shake things up. The adventurers were totally stunned when that young man pulled these noodles out of his tiny bag. Estelle clocked a weird similarity to paste, but it was way too bright white to be normal stuff. So she demanded answers, and the hero told her it was a lanya thread dried under the sun. The girl's jaw dropped when she heard it. A langia wasn't just any monster. She was an earth element beast who could mimic anything, and she hunted by weaving the web like it was her trap. The young man swore one of those things had just spun a web, and he'd snatched it up, dried it, and ate. Ignoring the skeptics who said it couldn't be added, he was certain it'd be delicious, because it was packed with mana. Dish also told everyone that the demon and the spider monster from one dish were a perfect match, and the whole crew couldn't help but nod along. Once the cook dropped the noodles into the pot, they didn't just cook. They sparkled while they softened, and Assel couldn't stop staring as each thread turned silky the second it hit the hot water. Then with simple but sharp lightning-fast moves, he set the empty plates down and poured the steaming broth into each one. Then he tossed in some noodles, scattered in a few juicy pieces of meat, and shouted that his dish was finally done. And just like that, Disha Makona's special dish, Demon Bone Ramen, was finally ready, steaming in front of everyone, and the crowd couldn't wait a single second to dig in. The dish was built around bare meat, its shoulder simmered and spiced, then finished with lime candies and fish sauce to knock everything into perfect balance. Those silver-glowing noodles, dressed in a salty sauce brewed from dried seaweed, pulled in everyone's gaze the second they saw them. Ramen condemned and served with precision using chopsticks, waited on the table, daring adventurers to dig in, because even a single look made them hunger for more. A tiny cell spoon in one hand, chopsticks in the other, started digging in, taking a quick sip of broth from the spoon first just like everyone else. And the whole table erupted in excited praise over how magnificent that dish was. Some people raved about the rich, divine flavor, and how perfectly that salt and seaweed sauce pairs with the broth. Out of nowhere, a strange eternity swept through his whole body. Then he couldn't stop himself as his hand lifted the spoon and shoved it into his mouth. Even Isle lit up and said the dish's flavor revealed the real soul of ramen to her. Right after that, they didn't even realize the broth in the plate had vanished, leaving the rest of the ingredients untouched. The boys felt like they were getting laughed at, completely clueless about what ability this even was, until Dish straight up told them they'd already chugged the whole thing themselves, while the skull was busy doubting their brains. And the hero even said it was soup, then told them to remember the order next time. While they were still apologizing, he handed them more. Once they got that second helping, everyone dove in, slurping up long, winding strands of noodles with their chopsticks like they couldn't wait to taste every last bit. A few moments later, everyone dove into their noodles and went dead silent, slurping down bowl after bowl like they couldn't stop. Everyone stared, mouths watering, completely hooked on the food. Then Dish turned to them and demanded, "So, what do you think?" With that question, he jolted the boys back to their senses. Then Estelle snapped her eyes open and swore the dish was insanely delicious, shaking all over as she kept blurting, "Delicious." Even the demon went pale in pure horror. Right then, tears started spilling onto the table. Fram couldn't stop them, because what he was tasting was so insanely good, and he was honestly grateful he got to be born into this world. Even Eliza spotted her grandfather across the river, waving like he'd just dragged hope into the world. Then incense hit, her soul nearly evaporated, and the demon's eyes flashed as it realized they were losing their minds. The skull was sure the adventurers had cracked it, but Dish swore it was his mana that did the job, so he tried his dish too, and the next thing he knew, space opened up and stars burned into view. Clutching his head, the hero snapped that the demon should be proud, because, yeah, the ramen genuinely turned out delicious. The skeleton mage looked totally lost, and Dish snapped that his suspicions were right. Plus, he admitted he'd hit the nail on the head when he chose Elenia's web to trap ramen. The spiderweb-thin strands were rough and stubborn at first, but after they cooked up, they turned silky. Then Assel swore the noodles weren't just soft, they were unbelievably tender and nothing else could match them. Frame felt like the universe hand-delivered him to that ramen, and when the green onions and seaweed hit his bite, everything turned into pure, mouth-watering bliss. When they stared at that ramen masterpiece, both of them realized they were absolutely terrible at life, sweat pouring and tears streaming without their permission. So Eliza said enough and marched straight toward the final piece, the meat. As everyone took that first bite, fresh taste fireworks hit them, and the priestess even said the lime flavor was front and center. Yet it felt like she was chewing steak. Meanwhile, Isle tore through the noodles, tossing every flavor together in her mouth until she hit pure, mind-blowing perfection. They polished off the whole dish, slurping the last bits of broth right through the plate's neck. Then just sat there, thanking the food with nothing but silence, because no other words could possibly fit. And yeah, Fromm even said the first sensations were impossible to describe. But once the dish was done, he'd run every last word dry. Even Elizzo couldn't believe it. Dish pulled off his special dish somehow, squeezing every ingredient for the perfect flavor and weaving it all together like pure genius. Right then, the skeleton mage's proud skull practically basked in how his dazzling magic had dropped these adventurers. But Estelle shot back that all that stunning got him was turned into broth, And honestly, it was pretty damn good. The girl snapped back to the truth. Dish, that level 0 chef, had no real rivals at all. While Juan was busy toying with the demon, and then everything went sideways. Right now in Carbania's grand capital, inside the castle's dining hall, this girl snapped that the food had become painfully boring, and she was already sick of it. She prayed someone in this whole world could finally cook something that hit the mark, while the hero struggled to snap the jaw back onto the skull. After a while in Runlud, where Dish called home, summer finally slammed into the world, right in a land of 4 seasons, where the heat always felt hot, sticky, and never let up. And for the hero who'd been living in the mountains this whole time, summer didn't just show up. It scorched everything, brutal and unbearable. By the lake, the guy grumbled while gripping his fishing rod, panicking at the thought that the rising heat would smash the meat's quality fast. So he tried fishing anyway, but not a single bite ever showed up. He craved to cook the summer fish iwas, one that hoards its fat for autumn, so he could slice it into sashimi with just salt and pair it with blazing mataraj grass because the flavor was ridiculously exquisite. Right in the middle of his speech, Isle suddenly crept up from behind, snapping him into panic. Then she blurts that she stumbled onto him there completely by accident. She couldn't exactly brag about wiping out nearby monsters. Then the second she spotted Dish, her tasty food instinct kicked in and blasted a perfect sensor line straight at him. Right now, the rest of her crew lost sight of their comrade, and they couldn't figure out where she'd vanished to. Dish clocked the girl's heavy sweat and figured she'd sprinted at full speed to reach him right then. Estelle saw the sweat pouring off her and blamed it on the brutal heat, so she had no choice. She tore off her armor and finally gulped in some fresh air. After she yanked off her steel shoulder pads and gloves, she asked how she looked. But Dish didn't even glance her way, just kept fishing and grumbling that there was no bite, like Isle was screaming through his thoughts. He realized the IVs he'd been hunting for weren't there that day, so he spun his focus to the side. He frolicked in the lake, clutched the demon's skull, and snagged fish as they leapt out, while his master just stood there, baffled, wondering why he couldn't catch a single one. Dish had already hauled in enough fish for dinner, but he still had one last itch. He just wanted to land at least one ivas. Right when that thought hit, someone yanked and sat on his hook. With Isle right there cheering him on, the guy grinned, grabbed the fishing rod, and finally felt his line tug, then reeled in something with gorgeous fins. That catch turned out to be a tiny spirit hiding in a mermaid's body, and the second it snagged on a fishing hook by the cheek, misery hit like a wave. While the couples along the shore stared in shock at the chaos, the spirit flung her arms in frantic pleas, begging the hero to get her out of the mess. Then, fast as lightning, he apologized and asked how Wendell was doing. Estelle and one stood right beside the demon, and the second they heard the spirit's name, both of them froze in shock. They realized this tiny mermaid wasn't some random sea spirit at all. It was Mrs. Wendell, the underwater world enemy who could whip up natural disasters like it was nothing. Once she nailed her hunch, the spirit blasted the girl with a streak of nightlight speed, and even clocked the skeleton demon, which left Esau genuinely stunned, while Wendell just shrugged like, yeah, of course, she's a water spirit. What? Turns out the mermaid could hear every voice whenever someone was close to any water or reservoir, and the scary rumors about the Night of Lightspeed never touched those places, which made the girl breathe easier and feel genuinely happy. Wendell even sniffed the broth from the skeleton's skull to mock him, but at that exact moment Asal sensed something sweeter. Dish and the spirit were on good terms. Even the hero backed it up. He said she adored his oven, then she'd pop in every so often to grab a bite just like Asal. The mermaid flushed with embarrassment and fury, snapping that she didn't care for his cooking at all, insisting the food from her world was far better, even as it was obvious she'd been secretly enjoying his. When she heard that, Dish ruffled her own head, barked out a laugh, and flat-out refused to believe a single word. Asal realized Dish clicked with the sacred beast and even the water spirit too. But once she saw it with her own eyes, she just accepted it, because only Dish could be that kind of person. The hero leaned in and made the spirit a specific request, and Wendell instantly got it because it was summer and everyone knew what time it was. Isle finally snapped into the moment, wait, what are you talking about? Because she had zero idea what they meant. Then Dish and Wendell proudly declared that summer had finally arrived, time for the frozen ices to begin, and the skeleton mage along with the girl beside him stared in shock at the news. Asul said they'd pushed even deeper into the forest, and Wendell snapped around to Dish, asking how long he'd be stuck there, while Dish just said he needed a little more time. A little while later, the young man grinned and said this place was perfect. Then Isle shot him a sharp question. What was he planning to do since she'd come all the way here to hunt? Right then, monsters were ripping a squad of cells apart. One girl insisted her crew would be okay and handle it on their own, but Dish stared at her, totally confused. Then the young man said, we're here now, find the hole, and Asal snapped, what hole? Dish grinned and said, the one where the Frostbill sleeps for the winter. Frostbill is a massive, brutal monster, dangerous as hell because it tears across snow and ice with freakish speed. Then in summer it shuts down, hibernates, and barely ever crawls out of its burrow. Estelle blurted, shocked. She remembered it wasn't easy to beat him, but then she wondered, do monsters hibernate? Dish shrugged and said, guess it's summer hibernation, they dig a hole in the ground and sleep in it. Estelle said she'd never heard of it before, but when she ran into these monsters it was during winter, so she pressed. Then how are frostbill and frozen ice connected? Dish flashed a grin and promised the girl that if she ever ran into him she'd have to go herself, then his smile vanished. He spotted a tiny hole, and Isle muttered that this was just Frostbill's normal. Wendell hauled the boys along because her stomach was screaming, and Dish told her to hold up for a second. Then he grabbed a twig and started digging through her stuff. Suddenly, Isle heard a roar and felt the floor tremble, and Dish yelled that she had to run. Isle froze in shock, then demanded he stop. A wild beam blasted out of the hole, and just like that, snow started dumping from the sky. Dish insisted everything went perfectly, then apologized to his comrades for trying to scare them. The young man spun around and demanded an answer from Assel, and when he saw her trembling like crazy, he knew something was wrong. He grabbed her hand, and that's when Assel's face lit up with embarrassment. She shrieked that everything was fine, but Dish's hand was tiny and rough, like it belonged to a real man. Dish didn't get what Isle was saying, so she jabbed at her own hand, and Dish quickly apologized, insisting he'd grabbed it on pure instinct. After a little while, the boy started piling up snow, crunched it into a ball, and shoved it into Wendell's hands. Wendell took a bite, and the girl immediately laughed as she screamed how brutally cold it was. Then it hit Assel like a punch. Wendell's crew wasn't using ice to keep things cold at all. They were using it to serve frozen ice, and Wendell warned that the big chunks would be a nightmare to eat, so they'd have to chop them up. Dish fired up the cooking, and Assel spotted lime candies in the mix. Dish nodded, tossed goat milk into the bowl, and Assel's face lit up as that mouth-watering aroma rolled out. Finally, Disha Makona's brand new special dessert, Frostbill's frozen ice with goat's milk, was ready, and the girls lit up like kids, snatching spoonfuls and tearing into it nonstop. Assel swore those tiny snow crumbs melt the second they hit your tongue, and Wendell chimed in that the instant rush feels amazing. Then they hit the jackpot when they added goat milk. Assel grinned and said it tastes sweeter, and the lime candies hit just right. Then Wendell laughed as her teeth sank into that texture, chewing it with pure pleasure because it was ridiculously easy to chew. The boys dug in, then grimaced, the aftertaste bit back hard. Dish busted up laughing and said Wendell and Isle hated it too, yet they swore they were great tasters. Still, the boys couldn't get enough, they demanded more. After a bit, Dish flopped onto his bed and groaned, "Summer's ice, right? That's why I couldn't grab Ivan, but if one thing got caught, then we're good, everything's fine." He couldn't forget Ozzel's red face, and Dish rushed over like, "You okay?" before he sprang out of bed and strode up to Wendell, who was sprawled in the water. Will grabbed the spirit of water and dragged it to a new spot. Then the skeleton spotted mineral water and snapped, insisting it wasn't spirit water at all, but pure mineral water, the kind they used to prepare everything. The skeleton shot back that this trick was totally different from how he'd been hauling water, and Dish was like, "Yes, we'll finally get to eat white rice again." Soon as Estelle came back, rage hit. She ditched her teammates during the hunt, so her punishment was brutal. She had to forge frozen ice for herself. In the forest, chaos erupted, then the night snapped, the princess bolted. And sure enough, the occupation that kept her from Scoozy was out there hunting monsters. He knew this could go horribly wrong, so they picked the weakest monster, but she still wasn't having it, and the knights finally clocked it. The princess was in real danger. Right then, the girl threw herself into battle with terrifying monsters, and she was grinning because this was the hunt she'd always dreamed of. Arya Stell, the princess of the kingdom of Carbania. The knights marveled at the princess's wild power to mix elements, but they feared her age and her terrible attitude would wreck everything before she ever gets it right. She stood there blazing with pride in her strength, until she snapped her head back and realized she'd run way behind schedule, so she yanked open her bag for the medicine and it wasn't there. After a while, the girl snapped to the truth. She was totally lost, her mana was completely drained, and if a monster rushed her, she'd have zero chance to fight it off. Then her stomach ripped into a loud growl. She realized she was starving, until a distant shadow crawled across the ground and she squinted, only to spot a massive monster looming there. A crushing pressure pinned her the moment she saw him, and she realized she couldn't even take a step. She knew she'd never beat him. So her knees buckled as she trembled and begged her dad and mom to save her. Dish suddenly popped up behind the wolf and snapped, "Are you okay?" And the girl went wide-eyed, stunned that Dish was actually riding on the back of that monster. Suddenly, her stomach growled like thunder. Dish realized she was hungry, grabbed something fast, and told her to wait a second. She stared at him like he was weird, but not in a monster way. Dish reached for the food, and the girl's face lit up, until she realized she couldn't just eat whatever some random stranger was shoving at her, so she only felt safe digging in if it came from the village, but Dish didn't trust a thing. Dish pressed a candy into her hands, and she froze, because that sweet little bite was the reason she'd been panicking all along. It tasted rich and sugary, but every snap of flavor carried a whole mix of herbs. The girl snapped, totally stunned, and blurted, I have no clue what kind of weird candy is this. Dish blinked in shock then blurted out, something's just like. While the girl went pale, screamed, and Isle heard it loud and clear. She got pressed about what happened, shrugged off the blame and said she'd misheard, then insisted she wanted to try the line candies again. After all, she told them she'd finish the job first. Dish and Wan trekked through the forest. And while the princess girl braced for a boring treat, she ended up getting candy that actually tasted amazing. Then she spun to the young man and demanded, "What's your name?" Dish grinned and introduced himself, then asked the princess, "And you?" The girl flashed a bright smile and promised she'd introduce herself just for him. Dish turned his head like it didn't matter. Then she snapped into a scream, begging him to hear her out because she almost never gets to finish her own story. She blurts out, "I'm Ariestella Lancarbonia," and Dish immediately groans, "That's way too long, can I just call you Alice?" She snapped at him, baffled that someone like Dish could whip up candy that good. Then she demanded to know who taught the kid, and Dish calmly told her, "I made it myself." Alice pressed him about his powers, and Dish snapped back that he had absolutely zero, no abilities at all, leaving Alice stunned. Then she burst out laughing, saying that's why the boy was hiding so no one would mock him. Dish's whole body froze. Alice saw the rage in his eyes, and even so Dish quietly closed in on her. Alice started scrambling to apologize to the boy. Dish snapped at her, demanded to know why she was apologizing, then told her to step aside, she was blocking the space. And Alice was left totally confused about what he was up to until Dish grinned and said he was getting the camp ready. Alice blinked in shock, he wasn't even mad, and Dish just shrugged that he was used to getting laughed at. Then Alice caught on to what camp he meant and fury hit her like a slap. Dish snapped back that she defollowed him on her own, no one dragged her here. Then Alice shrieked she wanted the bed, but Dish warned, "My house is way far from here and it's already night, the monsters will wake up any minute." Right then Alice's stomach growled again. She asked the boy if he wanted more food, but Dish snapped back that the candy was all gone. Alice stared at Dish and felt her heart leap. This, she thought, was an adventure. She knew danger lurked out there, yet she never pictured adventures as something strange. Still, sadness sank in hard and she convinced herself she was worthless. She snapped her attention to Dish and demanded answers about Wyon. How could a powerless guy like him even live with a monster this strong? Before she could finish, Dish stared at Wyon and blurted that he'd brought something, and Wyon just rolled in with ice. Later on, Dish whipped up beer potatoes, bragging that there was zero alcohol in them so Alice could totally chow down. And when Alice wondered why they were frozen, Dish snapped back that the snow mice had snatched them. The snow mouse is a tiny monster that shows up in huge numbers in early spring, and when winter hits, it freezes your food and feeds on it because hunting is off the table. It's not especially deadly, but touch one and you can frostbite fast. Alice let out a heavy sigh and Dish snapped, asking what happened, so Alice told him potatoes weren't really worth eating. Dish's anger flared and he vowed, "Then I'll cook them anyway so she can actually enjoy them." Alice still didn't trust Dish, even though that lime candy caught her off guard, because she knows perfectly cooked potatoes when she tastes them, and now she can't stop wondering how Dish does it. She watched Dish tossing the coals into a cauldron and stacking potatoes right on top, and she couldn't believe anyone would dare call that cooking. Then Alice froze, sensing something strange, and the moment an intriguing smell hit her, she leaned in, wide-eyed with surprise. Alice couldn't believe what she was seeing. Those potatoes weren't just cooking, they were frying right on the stones. The longer she waited, the harder her stomach begged for it. She couldn't help grinning at how badly she wanted to take a bite. Dish grinned at the potatoes, inhaled that mouth-watering aroma, then turned to Alice and said they were finally ready. Right before he revealed his Mekon specialty, stone-fried beer potatoes. Alice grabbed the hot potato with her bare hands, and the dish tossed her a leaf. She thought that heat was the worst part, until the scorching burn of it on the stones hit her, and then a mouth-watering smell of potatoes slammed into the air. Alice's eyes lit up as a gorgeous golden glow and a gentle, velvety texture caught her attention, and the moment she took a bite, she was instantly blown away by how incredible it tasted. She swore it was some kind of potato cream, then turned to Dish and basically demanded, "How do you nail it every time?" Because he'd only cooked it on the rocks and somehow made it taste incredible. Dish shot back that it all came down to temperature and time. Alice stared at him, asking what he meant, because she remembered Dish roasting those potatoes on the fire for ages, turning the heat up one slow degree at a time. Dish told everyone that higher heat makes potatoes go sweeter, so he tinkered like crazy until the idea hit, roasting potatoes on hot stones. Alice called out Dish for pretending he was a zero, and the moment she saw the cracks, she knew he was hiding something from her, but how in the world could he whip up food that delicious without any abilities? Dish admitted it was the truth, because if it wasn't, he wouldn't have to hide out among mountains and forests. Alice snapped to the truth, staying here was too dangerous. Then blurted, "I was rude to you," and rushed out an apology. Dish grinned and asked if she liked his food, and Alice nodded right away. After a little more time, Alice devoured every last bite, then realized she'd stumbled into something unreal, an incredible person, and a mouthwatering dish all in a place so remote it felt impossible. Then the girl made up her mind and told Dish to turn her into someone else. But just as she started speaking, a burst of air shot out of one of her places, cutting her off instantly. She turned beet red with embarrassment, and right as Dish opened his mouth, she snapped, "Don't you dare tell me." A little later, Alice trekked down from the mountains and pushed through to the castle, and her parents tore into her, until the princess stepped in and told them the whole story of her adventure. Later, she'd stare out the window at the mountain, get hit with a sudden craving, and just have asterisk to eat potatoes. A bit later, Dish stared at a massive castle, and holy hell, it looked unstoppable. Ossel snapped at him, shocked that Dish had actually gotten an invite from the princess after he'd turned her down 3 straight times. Assel couldn't figure out why the princess dragged him over. Then it clicked. She just wanted another bite of Dish's food and nothing else mattered to her. Then Dish cornered Ossel and demanded answers about her wounds. Ossel warned that the medicine was about to run dry, so she'd have to hit the pharmacy, and Dish handed her the herb Ayademogi. Then Assal leaned in and told Dish exactly how he planned to show up at the royal palace. Only first, she knew he had to get properly dressed. A little later, Assal paced, waiting for Disha, and the maid rushed in to say they'd finished dressing her. Then joy lit up Assal's face. Suddenly, a dish hit the table out of nowhere. Assal froze in surprise, but Dish snapped at the girl not to stare at him like that. So Assal blurted out an apology, and then she turned her gaze to another person who was just as stunning. They rushed to the princess. Alice felt relief at last, until she spotted the transformed Dish and froze, unable to recognize him. Dish snapped around to Alice and said it was him, and Assal froze, then begged Dish to stop calling the princess that. Alice just shrugged and said the picture fits Dish perfectly. Assal couldn't figure out what any of it meant, and Alice just said that she and Dish had run into each other once before. Then the beer potatoes sizzled on the stones and tasted insanely good. Assal screamed that it wasn't fair, begging the princess to see the truth. Then Alice snapped back that it was Assal who'd been unfair for hiding that cook from her, and after Assal apologized, Alice said she just wanted that dish so she could cook something else for her. Assal nodded and spilled how they'd eaten a monster. Then Alice froze in shock. Assal admitted she'd gobbled up monster-filled dishes, and Alice couldn't believe a meal like that could actually be cooked. Alice immediately blurts out an apology for bothering Disha the moment she arrives, then tells him her stomach's empty and demands he cook something for her right away. Dish shot back that he didn't want any part of it, and the whole crowd instantly went silent, pure shock in everyone's faces. Alice pushed him again, and Dish snapped that he refused, no debate. When Alice demanded why, Dish just said he wasn't in the mood, and Isle couldn't believe it because this was nothing like Dish at all. Alice went straight to Assel and begged for help, saying she was Dish's friend and needed to stop him, but Assel shot back that Dish didn't even want to cook, so forcing it was basically a lost cause. They yanked him in, changed his whole look, and dragged him straight to the castle. Assel swallowed her pride, apologized for her blunder, and then realized that Dish probably hadn't even hit the city yet. Isle told the princess to hold on while she fixed the dish back to normal, but Alice realized there was nothing she could do, because for a cook, hands and heart matter most. She trusted the girl, then leaned in and asked, "So what are you going to do?" Assel shot back, "That dish is a whole person, grew up right in the middle of cooking. And if this place doesn't feel right, then just hunt down somewhere that matches his home." The kitchen is buzzing with action. Food is boiling in a pot, giant animal skins hang from the walls, and dishes fly together as everyone leans in, watching closely, while she loads fresh vegetables into the meat and plates it all like a master. She grins and proudly tells Dish he likes this. Then she spins around and freezes when the plate is gone. Dish stares at the other dishes in stunned disbelief, yells, "It's cool, what is this? Is it really a copper pot?" And the room goes dead silent. Dish whips around and spots a bunch of chefs huddled together, whispering about the food. So he strides over, confused about what's going on, until his eyes lock on something ahead and suddenly stop cold. He spots a loaded plate, rice piled in the center, meat swimming in rich gravy around it. Then the chef points at the dish and demands, "Introduce yourself." He's stunned someone actually just asked him, so he blurts out his name and the cook grins and says he's the famous chef who made the princess fall in love with his food. Then he leans in kindly and asks, "So why are you here?" Then Assal steps out with a serious face and tells them he got an invitation from the princess. She immediately asks if they can dig into what's really going on, and he's clearly hooked the moment he hears it. Dish gasps, pointing at the food like it's a crime scene. "Wait, is it really true nobody's going to eat this anymore?" The cooks stare at him, wary and unsure. "No, not anymore." Then Dish grins and asks, "Can I try?" And their shock doubles as he grabs a spoon and digs in with a bite. His face lights up in a grin and he practically gushes, "It's so delicious." Then he leans in to say the real magic is all about the texture, and the second he tastes it, he knows it's perfect. The sugar hits just right. He sits there thinking, they really know desserts, especially that sugar and milk combo. They nailed it perfectly, first his throat, then his stomach, and somehow it all creeped in so slowly it felt like it happened without him even noticing. Now he can't stop thinking about chocolate, how it hits the mouth like pure magic, and how they swear it's best to add it in moderation. But when he feels it, it's got this bitter edge, and that's what makes it perfect with sweet ice cream, because it drags him right back to his own recipes. Dish grins and says it's been forever since he's tasted something someone else cooked. Then his eyes light up as he praises the dish as insanely delicious, declaring the cook the best. Asul snaps at Disha to mind his language, and the cook immediately shakes his head like, "No, you don't need to be rude." Then he thanks Asul, and those words pump everyone up to keep working. Dish grins and says he gets it, because for cooks, delicious is basically a medal, and Asul's smile says everything, his mood's lifted. Then the cook leans in and admits the princess hasn't been liking his cooking lately. Dish is totally confused and blurts out that it's delicious, so what's the problem really? When the food gets whisked away, the cook repeats her exact words and says, yeah, she only complains that the taste isn't bad, but it looks downright terrible to her. Dish stared at the food and said it's spot on, meals have to look good too. And then he realized the princess wasn't just being stubborn, she was dropping them a clue about what was really wrong. Then a scream hits his ears, he whips around and there it is, one of them yelling at the other, and he's stuck there like, what am I doing? Before he blurts out a super awkward apology. But the moment they see the damage, they snap at him that he's bleeding, so he better get away from her right now. Disha's mind is a messy storm, colors, medicines, and faces all tangled up, so he rubs his head and desperately tries to make sense of it. Then he turns to his uncle and asks what he thinks, while the princess paces back and forth inside the room. Clearly something is gnawing at her. She can't stop thinking that if she just told him to cook, he'd drop everything, yet even now every dish sits there empty, unanswered, and she blurts it out. Does he hate her? She thinks it all started with that incident, like everything else going off the rails because she's been messing up nonstop lately. Then she shrugs about the ice cream she just had and admits she straight up tossed it. When they pressed her for answers, she snapped that something felt off about her look, then blurted the very first thing that popped into her head, fully knowing she'd messed it up. But now she has to scramble up an apology for Dish, right as he bursts in and asks Alice if she's here. The princess shrieks in pure shock. She whips around and locks eyes with Disha, and the cook tension spikes instantly. No way, he's the one who made my ice cream, she thinks, and relief hits hard because everyone knows he's one of the best in the whole kingdom, and she fully trusts him. But she can't wrap her head around why he's with Dish now, especially since they're both probably furious at her. And when she realizes she's the one to blame, she decides she has to apologize. The cook snaps his gaze to the princess and tells her they'll add something to her look, just like she asked. And the moment he lifts the lid, the second air hits the dish, a wall of smoke explodes out. Alice blurts out, shocked, "What is this?" And when she sees the princess recoil, she spots that smug smirk and immediately thinks he actually pulled it off. The princess stares at the ice cream, stunned by that gorgeous green, and the cook keeps his cool as he tells her, "So you're surprised, huh?" Alice sits there in silence, shocked by how unreal the green ice cream looks. She's never seen anything like it. The cook proudly says they fixed the last batch using her advice, and the princess blinks in confusion, demanding to know what advice they're talking about. She recalls saying, "That tastes amazing, yet the thing is an absolute eyesore." Then her heart drops, a silent scream tearing out of her, and she panics, thinking, "I can't claim that was on purpose, I'm way too embarrassed." The cook grins and asks her to taste it, so she grabs the spoon with shaky hands, thinks, "This is exactly what I asked for asterisk," but then she freezes. Something's off. She takes a bite of the ice cream. She bursts into a sudden scream, because this cold is brutal, and the shock jabs straight into her chest like wildfire. The kind of thrill you get when scorching heat finally gets smashed by a perfect cool breeze, maybe even a full-on snowstorm. Then she digs in for more, thinking, honestly, this isn't so bad. The cook leans in and asks what she thinks, and she grins back with total confidence. It's incredibly tasty. He bows with a grateful thanks, but she just keeps staring in awe, insisting the texture is absolutely perfect. Toss in milk and sugar and the whole thing turns sweeter. Then that cold, bitter chocolate hits like a masterpiece, still straight from the fridge, practically begging you to bite into it. She keeps eating, and a wave of pure joy hits her. She can't believe how perfect this combo of ingredients tastes, like she's living the dream, but then her mind suddenly starts to get stuck on something. Dish hails her and asks, "Was it tasty?" The princess shoots back, "Did you really cook this?" He grins and admits, "No, my uncle did it, I just helped a little." The princess looks stunned because she didn't see that coming. The cook says, "If Dish hadn't struck that idea first, I never would have dared to think we could blow her mind like this." Then he turns to the princess, watching her go wide-eyed, and grabs Dish by the shoulder. "Don't worry, every bit of the credit goes to me." Asul stares at him and swears she's seen this guy before. He's one of Cabania's top chefs, and she's convinced he just clocked the cookery of some young kid too. So she's ready to crown him with the title of the most delicious ice cream in the whole kingdom. The princess pulls Dish aside, practically vibrating with curiosity, demanding to know how he made that ice cream so dangerously good. Dish shrugs and says it's no big deal. He only tucked in a Yagamogi leaf, and when she doesn't get it, she fires back for answers again. The herb Yagadamagai is famous for one reason. It seals wounds fast, it calms brutal stomach pain, and when you mix it with divine water, you get a drink that refuels strength and mana. He brags that he snatched fresh Yadamaga leaves, crumbled them into ice cream, and then claimed it was chocolate ice cream served in a cup with that medicinal Yadamaga. The princess gushes that she never knew tossing in grass would make everything taste so good, but Dish cuts in and snaps that it's not about flavor at all. Ayad Hamagi is what mends her from the inside, and once it clicks, she's like, "Oh, okay," and Dish ends it with, "So it wasn't even that bad, right?" What? The princess grins and yells, "You nailed it." Then she promises him the title of the most delicious ice cream in the entire kingdom. The cook bows, thanking her, and the other cooks burst into cheers, while the princess smiles and admits her taste buds never lied. Then she tells herself she'll keep it this way, and finally says the appearance matters for a reason. Now she urges Dish back into the conversation, spills the real reason she called, and asks if he can whip up another ice cream. Because there's someone out there who has asterisk to taste it. They march on, the dish spins around, and they ask Alice if she's alright. She shoots back that she's fine, and they both agree they've got to get that ingredient. They rush up to the girl, and she greets Alice like it's nothing. Then Dish stares at her for way too long, finally snapping, "So who are you?" And she fires back with a scary little warning about how rude that is. Alice bursts out that she's the Queen of Calbania, Emma Rawson. Then the Queen flashes a smile and tells her it's not worth a thing. She rushes in with ice cream and begs her mother to taste it, swearing it's the greatest in the whole kingdom's history. Emma squints and challenges her, "Is that actually true?" Then she grabs a spoonful for herself and takes a bite. With her eyes shut tight, she gushes that this blend of sweet ice cream and dark chocolate tastes straight up magical. And she hasn't felt this kind of joy from ice cream in ages. Then she leans in and asks what they slipped into it, and the princess smiles. "A leaf of Yadamogi." Emma smiles gently and tells him he's the one who saved Alice during that incident, and she thanks him with all her heart. Right then, Dish's cheeks light up with a blush, and Alice just cuts in, grinning, "Yeah, but we've still got a whole lot of ice cream left." What? Emma rushes to apologize to Alice, saying she has zero appetite today, and the three of them head out together with Isle. As they walk, Isle presses, asking if she really didn't like Daish's cooking, but Alice instantly soothes her and swears it's not like that. Mom's always been this way. She figured if he coached her, she'd win that meal. Then Dish starts asking she didn't even look okay and whether her mother was really that sick, so she snaps at him to call her queen. The cook leans in and tells Dish the queen's slipping. She's been getting colder and more withdrawn ever since the heat started, and now her broken, no appetite excuse has turned into a full-blown crisis. He insists their cooks keep trying new tricks, but nothing works, so lately she's been living on nothing but chopped apples. That's why they called Dish, because they had to rush in and tell him his mom was sick, and they'd kept it locked down so they wouldn't panic the residents. Because if that news ever leaked, things could get terrifying fast. They kept dragging her into meeting after meeting, but the doctors just shook their heads. She'd been hit by some unknown disease. And the queen couldn't handle the blistering heat either, like something inside her heart was failing. Neither the cooks nor the doctors can figure out what's happening, and then Alice's sadness crashes in. She sobs out for her mom, while Dish stares on, desperate to spot a way out. He whips around to his uncles and asks if they've ever tried medicinal herbs, and they swear they already handed the queen the best potion, nothing. Then Dish snaps, "So what about the seven-colored flower?" This seven-flowered plant is a medicinal herb, so legendary it was named for the way it shimmers in rainbow light. An ultra-rare miracle herb, people swear can even resurrect the dead. The doctors recoil in shock and demand, "Do you even know what you're saying?" This herb is the most powerful medicine in their whole kingdom. Assel tells him to hold up and turns to Dish, asking if he can do it, only for Dish to snap back, "Nope, that's not right. I've never even tried it." Assel blasts out an angry shout, "Wait, are you really that familiar with people like this?" They press him to prove it's even a real person, and Alice fires back, "Is it a spirit or a magical beast?" Assel snaps that he only knows of it asterisk, not personally asterisk, and then declares, "It's a Caledonian boar." It's a monstrous boar that towers like a two-story building, ridiculously strong, and nearly impossible to stop once it charges. Because the crazy part is it doesn't just eat anything. It craves fancy, luxurious food and picks its meals like it's royalty. He brags that he chomps down on food no one could ever dream of, and she erupts, yelling it's still a monster. Then he calmly snaps back that he only saw it once, the seven-colored Caledonian boar. The girls gasp in disbelief and demand answers again. Then he snaps back that monsters pull the same move all the time, and the food's effects sink into your body like a map, telling him exactly where this grass grows. Alice nods like she gets it, then points to the herb and pushes the plan. Isle trembles and blurts, "Does the princess really want to come with us?" And Alice shuts her down hard, saying it's absolutely not up for debate. She blurts out that we're talking about her mother, And she won't just let it sit like this because Ossel panics, saying that if anything happens. Alice storms in saying she gets it all, yet she refuses to stand by and do nothing, so she tells Ossel not to stop her. Then she declares she must find that 7-flower garden to save her mother, and yes, this is a direct request. Right here she declares that from this moment on she's the Light Knight Esol, and she's grabbing Princess Eris's fate with her own hands, vowing to guard her fiercely and hunt down the 7-colored flower. Alice's jaw drops at Azel's reaction. Then the knights burst in, face turned toward Mrs. Azel, and demand to be allowed to help, because it's their sworn duty to protect the princess. Azel can't believe it, and Alice watches her admiration spark for those knights. The cook jumps in, insisting they'll have to whip up dinners for more than 3 and that they'll need backup from other cooks too. Alice stays quiet, then wipes her tears away and admits, "I've always been so capricious." Dish grins at Alice and says he's thrilled for her. Then you jump in, telling him it's all because of him, and Alice fires back a heartfelt thanks. But the moment she's alone with her thoughts, she goes quiet, her mind rushing back to her mom, and she makes a silent promise to herself. She will save her. Alice blurts that they've finally made it, but Estelle shoots her a doubtful look. Because she's been coming to this exact place to wipe out monsters for ages, and she's never once laid eyes on a 7-colored flower. Asks Assel if she has any idea what a 7-colored flower is. Then a loud noise hits, they both snap their heads toward it, and Assel's guest drops in, terrifyingly close to the truth. They crouch in the bushes and stare at the boars, and Estelle blurts, "Is that the 7-colored Caledonian boar?" Dish says, "From this far off I can't confirm it yet." Alice frowns and quietly clicks into place, so it's not that simple. Dish leans in, totally confident he knows exactly where to get it, then tells Ossel his plan, and Ossel immediately snaps, "What did you come up with?" Dish grins and says, "It has to rain." Ossel frowns hard. "Rain, why?" Dish tells them those 7-colored flowers bloom the moment the rain hits, and that's exactly what they have to set up. So when they ask if it'll for sure work, Dish just smirks. "We won't know until we try." Alice nods and blurts that she'll do it. Isle then snaps, asking if she's really sure this spell is necessary, but Alice cuts her off fast, insisting she's doing it to save her mother, and urges Isle to let her proceed. She whips out weather-changing magic and with one spell unleashes a wall of torrential rain. Then the sky answers as thick clouds slam together right above them. And when the downpour finally hits, everyone's stunned she pulled off magic that powerful. And fires off the question to the princess, asking if she's really okay. Alice wonders if this is enough to satisfy the 7-colored flower, and Dish grins, saying, "I'm fine, let me take a look." Then they spot countless rainbows splashed across the ground, and the princess freezes, shocked at first, then completely enchanted. She doesn't get it at all and blurts out what it means. Because a rainbow is supposed to hang in the sky, this one feels wrong, like it's tugging them farther and farther into the forest, and Dish can't help but sense there's something lurking behind it. Ossel beams and blurts, "So what is it?" But when he hears the truth, he's stunned. No, it's the remains of the Caledonian boar, and they're so lost by it that they can't stop asking. Dish leans in and says, "Pour water on it. If it truly glows, you're safe. Everything will work out." Estelle freezes in horror and blurts, "Wait, you're not letting the queen eat it, are you?" Dish snaps back, "No, that's not what's happening." Alice swore he wasn't wrong about the Caledonian boar munching the 7-flowered daisy. "Follow the tracks and you'll dig up the real one." Dish just shrugged and said, "Everything checks out. That's the way it is." They step closer and spot a whole flower bed packed with this plant, and Alice blurts out, "Wait, does a 7-flowered flower really grow here?" Estelle nods, saying there are tons of herbs around, but she can't make sense of why it shines in rainbow colors. And he tells Isle they forgot to warn her about one more property. She snaps, "Wait, is there really another?" Then they break it down for her mimicry, the 7-flower secret trick. It can pretend to be another plant. Assel blurts out, half panicked, "Are you serious?" Then the 7-flowered plant vanishes right before her eyes, and they quickly tell him this is just how these plants work. Water turns into their worst enemy. Assal suddenly senses something, whips around, and the beast one feels it too, so Assal demands what's going on. Then he springs to his feet to shield the princess, bellows that he's coming, and she snaps at the knights to get ready. The boars charge at them, but the princess slams her earth magic down and throws up a stone wall that the boars batter non-stop. Then the knights roar in awe, praising her as they fight side by side with her, all for the queen's name. At night, Alice whips around to Isle and swears she's counting on him. Isle nods like he gets it, and asks if he understands. One and Assal burst out, yelling that the Caledonian boar is so delicious they can barely stand it. While Alice trembles and asks what they're thinking, even as Mom's health is about to jump up fast. Assal grins and shouts that the princess has officially given the okay. Isal screams that she's Isal, so that boar better be thankful, because she's about to eat him. And just as that hits, another one yells and charges in with hungry eyes. The boars charge at them, but Assel hacks one down in a single swing and the other bolts in pure terror. Then he roars, "Don't run, fine, let him dare." When it's all over, every last boar drops and Dish blurts in disbelief that they can do it too. Assel grins and asks if he's liking it, and if they'll get to eat their hard work. Dish shakes his head saying he hasn't cooked it yet, because the real job of a cook is making it taste amazing, just the way he thinks it should. Dish inspects the boar up close, then tells Alice he needs people, ideally folks who know how to butcher animals, and Alice nods back saying she gets it. Dish tells the knight he's never messed with it either, so this is gonna be risky. He says the back places, just like with the herbivores, are set to the same spots, and they'll start hacking it up like it's just a normal boar. The knight fires back, everything's accepted. The knights start chopping into it, then one of them blurts, "Why are we doing what he says?" The other just smirks and goes, "Come on, the princess brought him." And when he spotted that 7-colored flower, he was straight up awesome. And yep, he even has a pet monster, plus misses Asel's own recognition. He's climbed that far with his skills, so it's no wonder he commands their attention. They think this dish is a terrible person, then it fires back with a grin and goes, "You nailed it," and they're totally lost, asking what that even means. Dish lays it out bluntly. Almost all monsters barely have any meat worth eating. Sure, it's technically edible, but it's not tasty and they're stuffed with worthless flesh. He then says it all comes down to time. How much meat you've got is exactly how long you'll be cutting it. And he turns to Isle and Alice, telling them not to let their hard work be wasted. He tells himself he wants more of it than anyone alive, and right as the thought hits, Dish's stomach growls like thunder. Osel can't believe it. He never guessed Dish would get this hungry. He goes straight to the glutton in his head, the spoiled food lover wrapped up in nothing but luxury, and he can't stop thinking about Alice. He shakes his head and thinks, they all love the Zero Chef's food no matter what, and honestly, he can't wait to cook more than anyone else. When Osel and Alas finally stumble home, they've got food waiting. But one of them can obliterate monsters and even feast on them, and still he's got nothing to use because he's zero. Ever since childhood, a life-or-death rule was shoved down his throat, and you bet he hated every second of it. Until he stumbled into a business that broke those chains, and deep down, all he wants is to chase one shot at freedom. He yanks something out, screams that it's here, and the knights stare like, wait, is he talking about ribs? He wipes his hands with a towel, fires off the inventory like it's a battle list. Salt and garlic, oil for the firebags, and then he grins. This is the only one we've got. Asel asks Dish if she can use it, and Dish says yes, since it was handed to her by a cook from the royal kitchen. When the cell spots a square wrapped in paper, he gasps and yells that it gleams like gold, then grabs the product and tosses it straight into Dish. He's slamming together multiple pots at once, and the knights stare at him like it's magic, so they ask the princess if this is enough and she nods. It'll do. Then she turns to the dish and says it should boil the water, but she wants to know one thing: how long do they keep it boiling? Dish tells him they do it to kill the monster's stink, and pushes him to admit he'd never be able to choke down a monster that reeked like raw meat. He tells the knights he's taking the cracks removal straight to them, and then he leans in and asks if he can trust them. They tell him loud and clear that he absolutely can. Then he starts slicing the meat, threading it onto a rope and hanging it up to smoke. Assel leans in, asks about it, and he tells her, it's smoked meat. He claims that cooking with smoke leaves a wild effect, and Alice fires back that you can see the difference crystal clear, so Assel can't help but ask what he means. She tells him that every monster and every person who can wield magic has these special pores where magic spills out, and the higher the monster's rank, the more pores it has. Then the smoke snaps them shut tight, stopping the magic from escaping. Isle beams at the princess, gushing that she's seriously cool, and the princess proudly eats up the compliment. Then Dish starts shaking spices onto the meat, and the nearby knight chimes in, that's salt and pepper. He whips around and demands where his lime candies are, then shoots off another question, any alcohol hiding around there. The knight says there's one cure that works like an antidote, thrusts the bottle forward, and the other grabs it, thanking him like their lives just got saved. He tips the contents over the meat and starts pounding it with furious rhythmic massaging. Assel blurts out what he's making, and he fires back, I figured smoked meat still needs seasoning. He tells them all that's left is waiting, because he's going to toss the knight's gutted monster meat right into the pot. Then he sprinkles in the same salt and pepper, heaps in grated greens, stirs it all together, and finishes it off with a splash of milk and beef. He jumps right into cooking, and the whole room turns to stare. Everyone's mouths water as they marvel at the smell, calling it absolutely wonderful. Assel snaps that her nose is already maxed out, and Alice blurts that she can't take it another second. Dish cuts in, telling them to wait just a bit. He lays the cooked meat on a plate and announces it's Dish's special treat, crispy fried Caledonian boar meat. The knights erupt with joy, yelling how incredible it is, like this whole wilderness just got a feast, and they can't stop gushing over having a dish like this out here. Assel whips around to the princess. She gets it instantly and snaps that it's all on them. This happened because we earned it, she says, and with their help they found the 7 flowers so her mother will heal. She tells them all you're all amazing, then pushes them to pile their plates high and reminds them to thank their best cook, so everyone bows and thanks him right there. The knights stare at that food, and then it hits them. Gratitude feels impossible, because to them it's basically a monster wrapped in delicious meat. Then they hear this jaw-dropping cry of adoration and they're stuck wondering, is it a sudden attack or is something monstrous out there? Isle takes one bite, shrieks and declares it insanely delicious. Then everyone else steps in, bites too and screams in awe right beside her. The knights stare at Asal, baffled by why the holy knight is acting like this, because they watch the princess drift off while she tastes food and they're stunned. The knights just stared for ages, then finally agreed to give it a try. One by one they shove the meat into their mouths, the captain's face lights up as he starts loving it, and the knights realize this was way beyond what they expected. The captain can't even wrap his head around it. Meat is meat, plain and simple, yet it hits, and power starts pouring into his body because he never expected monster meat to taste this damn good. He slices the meat and freezes, stunned by how ridiculously tender it feels, even though it was cooked at a brutal high temperature like it's bursting with raw potential. Another guy bites off a chunk, shouts like it's the best thing ever, and the others stare in disbelief. Because that flavor is unreal, but yeah, it's monster meat and they just can't wrap their heads around it. He's in pure awe like, the moment you bite in and let your tongue tease the flesh, the meat just melts away and the captain can't help but wonder at that little salty kick, like a standout accent you can't match to any other kind of meat. He pushes himself up, stares out into the distance, and spots the house and the people. Then tears burst out as his voice shakes and he pleads that he misses them, that he desperately wants to see his children, his wife, and his parents. He slumps at the table, shaking as he blurts that his soul is breaking, then begs the other knights, try it too. They hesitate for a second, then grab the fork and take the first bite. Right after that, everyone erupts in a shocked scream in unison and immediately digs in harder. Alice beams with pride as Estelle joyfully heaps praise on God for this perfect result. Then Alice turns to her and says, even those knights who are usually so strict. Yes, we told them to eat it and still. She thinks this is no good, you can't force it or the taste will turn out totally wrong, but what else can she do? Next time they'll reach out on their own. Estelle says everyone's chasing the biggest cuts, but the smoked ones are saving their glow for her. So she stares at the hanging meat. Her stomach growls like it's starving and she's confused because she just ate, yet the smell hits her again and suddenly her body demands more. Alice and Asal take one bite of the meat and their faces light up like they've hit flavor gold. Especially once they say smoked meat tastes totally different from anything fried, and Alice swears the fat melts in her mouth like butter, because she can't even figure out how something this divine is real. The captain whips around to the princess and says he thinks this mess should be left to everyone else. Because if people eat with both cheeks, then the smartest move is to tell them to eat nothing at all. The princess snaps he's right, and everyone else starts talking about how they need to be handled. Then Asal grins and says it'll be a total sensation and Alice immediately backs her up. She insists her mother has to try it and they head back home, where the townspeople rush up and greet them with pure joy. Estelle can't believe everyone's acting so hyped. Then the butler just shrugs and says, yep, that's true, because some zero cook prepared a dish they've never tasted in their whole lives. He says this is the very first time all these people have dared to eat monster meat, and everyone's stunned because it tastes freaking amazing, which explains why it's so loud in here. Isle then blurts out, so where's the dish at? The butler snaps back that he can't stop thinking about what to do with the 7-flower garden, and then Dish just stands there staring it down, stuck in deep thought. Because honestly, he has no idea how to use it. Everyone keeps calling him a culinary genius, but right now that confidence has completely crumbled. He takes a bite of the plant and decides it's not disgusting at all. The taste is tame, the color's dark like plain grass, and he swears he could cook it the easiest way possible. Just saute cheese, milk, and that 7-colored plant. Isle turns to Dish and bluntly asks if he shouldn't overthink it, she'll eat anything he makes. Dish says thanks, but he still wants to cook something Alice's mother will love, yet he's got no clue what would actually reel her in. He remembers it clear as day, she didn't just dislike the ice cream, she was totally out of appetite, and that's why he never even thought to save any for her. He knows cooking for the right person matters, yet he's never done it for anyone at all. He never asked Asal or the others, and nobody demanded a thing from him, so what does she even like? He whips his gaze around and spots the dish. That's what the cook has whipped up. He spots the pasta is ice cold, eyes catching something strange, and bam, an idea ignites in his head. He demands the cold pasta crew pull up the list of every dish they made before for Alice's mother, then tries to shove it off by saying it's confidential, like that's supposed to make them help, but they shut it down. Then the cook steps forward, thrusts a book into his hands, and asks, is this what you need? But the other cooks crowd in and yell that it's completely wrong. The cook tells him if anything goes wrong, I'll own it. Then turns to Dish and begs him to take over, crossing his fingers that it'll actually help him out. Dish thanks his grandpa, then blurts out the shocker, turns out he's the boss here. His grandfather snaps back that he's nothing but a lousy cook, and that he can't even satisfy the princess. Dish flips open the book, says it all clicks, and Asal straight up asks what he meant. Dish smirks and says it finally hit him. He already knows exactly what he's going to cook. In her chambers, Emma, Alice's mother, leans in, apologizes, and quietly admits she can't eat. But Alice won't let it go, insisting with fierce certainty that it's made from the seven-colored flower. Emma can't stop wondering if that seven-colored flower is actually the same one, and before she can finish, Alice bursts out in pure joy. "Yep, we got it just for you." Emma thanks her, cuts in fast, and says, "Not now." Then the dish pops up and tells the queen, "All good, everything's fine." He flips the tray around and swears it's exactly what she wants, yet Emma doubts it because she can't even muster an appetite. Dish throws the lid open, revealing the meal, and the scent instantly floods the room. Emma stares at them, stunned, and then her stomach growls like it finally wants in. Everyone gapes at her in disbelief. Alice snaps, asking her mom what just happened, and Emma turns crimson, slapping a hand over her mouth. She can't find the words and blurts that it's a shame, but Dish just grins and declares it isn't shame at all. It's the body's natural way of reacting. Emma snaps her gaze away, cheeks burning hotter by the second, and Dish tells her, "This is exactly what you always wanted." He swears it's his special dish, porridge cooked from 7 flowers, then Emma blurts, shaking with surprise, "Wait, it's really just porridge made from 7 flowers." What? The doctors scoff at the idea, saying that in this scorching heat porridge makes zero sense, and Emma still grabs the spoon. Then everyone loses it, yelling that the queen reached for it without even laying eyes on the dish, and demanding to know what the chef is doing with it. Acela snaps at the doctors to keep quiet while Dish ladles hot soup into a bowl. Emma stares at the porridge, decides on the spot, and scoops it up with a spoon before bringing it to her mouth. She takes a bite and thinks, "Whoa, this is hotter than I expected." But she's still more than capable of eating it because the heat hits that perfect sweet spot and she keeps going. She can't stop wondering if this sweet hit is just sugar, sweeter than ice cream, melting away like warm porridge the second it hits her tongue. Until her mind jumps to that 7-colored grass, nothing like any herb she's ever seen, and the way its name sounds feels like a secret waiting to be discovered. She keeps eating and swears the only thing that matters is that it's piping hot, like magma, and that the sweet salty mix of sugar, salt, and 7 colors of flour tastes absolutely divine, yet she still can't wrap her head around how he managed to cook it like that. The doctors are absolutely horrified. She keeps eating. Wait, is that really their queen? She spent all this time swearing she had no appetite, but right now she's totally different. They stare in stunned silence as she devours porridge with pure hunger, and it's instantly obvious she's loving every bite. Alice's face lights up as she watches her own work, and Emma feels like she's being reborn right on the spot, while Alice whispers to herself that it all finally worked. The queen devoured every last bite of her porridge, lit up and said it was delicious, then thanked her Isle. Isle insisted the queen clearly loved it, and even pointed out the plate had a portion meant for 4, yet the queen still ate the whole thing herself. The knights shriek in shock, then burst into joyous cheers as they realize their queen is recovering. Asal's eyes widen, because this is exactly what the 7-colored flower can do. Then the queen admits she was a little wrong and studies Asal with a curious, questioning stare. Dish flashes a grin and says, "That proves I'm right." Isle's totally lost and fires back, "What are you talking about?" Dish shuts him down. Alice's mother wasn't sick. The whole room gasps, then everyone blurts the same question. "Wait, are you saying she's really asterisk not sick?" Dish swore he cracked it by reading the dishes she listed. Cold peach spread, lemon ice, bean jelly packed with ice chips, and even cold pumpkin soup just like that. He says this place feels ice cold, so that's why he figured she wasn't sick. Then he pushes the point to Alice. She even brought her ice cream, and her mom used to eat nothing but cold food, so her body grew super sensitive to it. Everyone is stunned by this revelation. Asul finally gets why he tried that porridge and even tossed in the healing 7 flower, but he admits she hasn't fully bounced back yet. Alice whirled to her mom and asked if she wanted something hot. Why didn't she say that sooner? Her mother's eyes sank as she admitted, sadly, that there was nothing she could do. She'd wanted it too, but they kept shoving cold stuff at her and she couldn't speak up. She swings her gaze to the cooks who stepped up for her and begs them to forgive her, while the knights slip out through the book and tell her, "No, don't beat yourself up like that." Alice, though, is left staring, completely lost about who he is and what he's even doing there. He rips off his mask and tells them everyone just couldn't stop trying to think about her. Like the heat was so intense, even the thought of something hot makes you flinch. Sure, this whole thing doesn't give many good outcomes, but he admits one thing. That guy absolutely blew him away. They gasp in shock. Wait, is that really Professor Garvin? Dick has zero clue, so he blurts out the question, and Acel can't stop grinning as he proudly swears it's Garvin Weistace, one of the greatest adventurers alive, the princess's teacher. Dish claims he understands nothing, but the vibe screams cool guy, doesn't it? I mean, just look at the name. He asks whether that great man really got disguised as a knight and whether this is truly his thing. Garvin insists he was really there in that forest, and he just happened to spot them, because his curiosity was burning and he had to find out what they were doing. He says it's great to meet her, flashes his name, and tells her to just call him Harry. Dish introduces herself with a smile and says the same. Then the whole room goes dead silent because Dish just called herself Harry. Harry leans in like, why does nobody call me that? Can the cooks really pull it off? Then he turns to Dish and demands, so was what I did in that forest truly excellent? And right after he pushes for the answer. What kind of skill did I even have? Dish blinks at the question, then shoots back, I don't because I've got zero. Harry immediately gets suspicious and he's like, so if you've got no skill, how the heck did you even know about the seven-colored flower? Dish claims he's got nothing but knowledge and experience just that. Harry fires back, maybe zero is your skill. And then, right in the dead quiet, a brutal stomach growl rips the silence, and everyone whips around to stare at Emma in pure shock. She lets out an awkward laugh and says she stuffed herself, but somehow she's starving again, like that porridge vanished the second it hit her stomach, and then she asks, can I place another order? She tells them this time I want something way cooler, and she's fired up, craving a boost to her immunity, so she turns to Dish and asks what he thinks. Dish smirks and boldly says, leave it to me, swearing he'll whip up the perfect dish. Then he storms straight into the kitchen. In the kitchen, Dish dives into making a meat dish, and right then they crowd in asking if he'll let them help. The other cooks hover close, staring at him, and they all blurt out at once that they're ready to jump in so he can finally start giving the orders. The chef cracks that everyone wants to learn from him, then admits he's got zero cooking skills, so Dish squints at the mess and blurts, what are we even supposed to do? She grabs the moment, orders them to try anyway, and then roars, knife in hand, our cooking is just getting started. A little later, Osel pleads and begs Dish for what she wants, but Dish shuts it down hard, no cracks, no mercy, then Osel snaps, you refused, so that's why I lost my old power. She already told him what she needed about that chef spot. She's got a friend in the city, runs a tavern, and Osel wants that guy to be their chef for one day, but Dish can't wrap his head around why she's pushing for it. They trudge down the street, stop in front of a building, and Dish blurts out, so you're really going to work here? Osel nods. She tells him they mainly serve fish, but the manager is deadly sick. She says it's a relief there's zero risk to anyone's life. And then, plot twist, turns out her assistant Nearest is now running the store, so he finally gets to dive in and get acquainted. The cat-eared girl steps up and introduces herself as Nearest, then asks, so you're the cook Osal meant. Her smile lights up the room the moment she meets you. Osal snaps that the person can't cook at all, pure displeasure, and Nora's like, what are you even saying? Osal fires back, then until Nora gets better, why don't I work instead of her? Dish says he's free now, just like that, and insists it'll be way easier than cooking inside the castle, so Osel beams and asks, you'll really do it? And Dish answers, I will. Dish steps up and declares, this is my pal one, then points at the skeleton like it's the main event, saying he's after the broth, only for the skeleton to snap back in furious disbelief. Why'd Dish say that? Dish tells Nyaris, great to meet you, but the skeleton bristles and snaps, begging not to be brushed off. Then Dish glances around, sizes up the kitchen, and declares this place a proper tavern, like the atmosphere hits you the moment you step in. He recalls the dish and tells Nyaris, I'll cook just one. But she bristles and snaps that this is a canteen, so one dish won't cut it, and Dish just grins, what if it's insanely, ridiculously tasty? She asks if something like that really exists, and he whips around like, of course it does. Asal leans in, demanding to know what all those ingredients are, and Naras studies them even closer, then fires back, so what ingredients are you talking about? What? She spots a black, writhing creature and screams it's a demon fish, and sure enough, people still hauled it in thinking they'd try it. Then the poison wrecked absolutely everyone who touched it. This fish hits like lightning, playing dead to stalk its prey, especially humans, so no way you're using it as food, it's just too dangerous. Asal hoists that demon fish up like a trophy and bellows that the legends were right. This thing really is a demon fish. Even the skeleton freezes, then Asal cackles and taunts Naira about how her strength feels. Naira trembles, snapping back that strength has nothing to do with it. She's totally baffled and blurts that it's the first time she's ever seen someone catch him like that. While Dish grips the fish in her hands, Nyara's shrieking ramps up, and at the same time she's both awestruck and declaring she wants to be exactly like that. Dish swears that once you know the secret, anyone can catch it, just bend it on your third finger, and he immediately shows Asel the trick. Asel tries it and bursts out with a thrilled, I did it. Nyara steps in too, pokes it, and yells, this is awesome. Dish snaps that the fangs have to come out now, and Asal knows it won't be a walk in the park, so how is he even going to pull it off? Dish lays the fish on the table and starts pounding the nail in, and the fish's tail kicks and twitches the whole time. Asel realizes with this nail he nailed it dead on, so its own movement gets locked in place, and she watches like a hawk. Then the dish slices down along the fish's body and yanks out the insides, the wild part. The cell can't even wrap its head around how he pulled it off. Nearest stares at the fish, stunned by how gorgeous it looks. Then Dish snaps that this is only the start because poison lurks in its blood, and Nearest's mind flashes back to one terrifying truth. This isn't just any fish, it's a demon fish. Dish tells them heat will pull the blood out. Then we're good. And right away he decides to peel off the skin first. He even calls it out loud. They've got to cool it with plain water, hack the cuts in, and shove in stick after stick, straight into that thick, bloody pulp. Nearest leans in and asks if he's really about to fry magic stones. He grins and says, "Nope, your guess is wrong," then reveals he's got something way better. A special treasure from Disha Citrine. Nearest leans in, spots it, and declares that's a coal stove. She blurts, "Won't it smoke like crazy?" Dish just grins and says, "No worries, it's supposed to let the fire breathe right through." The second Assel hears the word smoke. Her mind instantly snaps back to that Caledonian boar the wild, mouthwatering smell, the dish in front of her, and her own grin like, "It's exactly that, you know." After a while, he flips the lid open, bam, meat inside, and the moment he says it looks great, the smell explodes and floods every corner. Estelle catches the scent and blurts, "I can't hold out any longer, what is that smell?" Then Nere sniffs too, and suddenly she's back to the day her mom told her about something just like this. She told them, sure, coal's fine for cooking, but magic stones are way better. Then she leaned in and asked, right, I'll jumped in too. She'd heard it somewhere and pushed her request straight away. "So can we get the meat cooking faster?" Dish pries open the lid on a jug and the girls scream, "That's sauce." As if they can't believe it's so black, then he grabs a brush, dips it in, and starts painting the fish with it. Magic is in the air, then Isle catches that scent and swoons like it's perfect, but the moment the skeleton senses it, it twitches. Isle panics and blurts, "What's there?" while calling it a skeleton from the broth. They spot the street packed with people and Isle tells herself not to freak out, this is how it's always been. Then Dish shouts that he's done and proudly reveals the special catch, fried demon fish. Isle and Nearest waste no time, grab a bite and dive in. Everyone roars that it's delicious, and the crowd outside can't stop staring like they're starving. Two Assel tears into the fish nonstop, and Nearest breaks it down. Crisp outside, buttery soft inside, so soft she had to try it for the very first time. Dishes claims it's all from the citrine. He asks if the aroma isn't even a little good. Then Isle admits she never, ever would have guessed it was a demonfish, and the moment the truth hits, she shrieks, "No way, this can't be." She can't stop staring at the sauce as it drips down, and Dish chips in that he calls it broth too, so Nearest fires off the question, is it really sugar? Assel squints and swears it doesn't taste sugary at all, and now she's left wondering what it truly is. Assel blurts a guess and quizzes Dish, and Dish confirms it, telling her she's right. Then she pulls out lime candies to show him, and Nearest stares and asks if these are really the exact same ones. He shoves a candy into her hand and dares her to taste it. She snatches it back hesitantly, stares at it forever like it might bite, then finally pops it into her mouth. She blurts out, "So sweet," and swears that this candy's just as good as the fish, right when Isle chimes and that's exactly why he chose them, and she can't help but call it a perfect fix. Dish insists it's not only the sauce. He stacked it right by frying them too, and that combo hits perfection. Nyaris smiles and says it's amazing, then turns to Dish and asks what kind of skill he's got. Asal's like, this is it. But maybe she won't believe him, because his name is Dish and he's a zero cook. Then Nearest barges in yelling, "I heard about you. You saved the princess from monsters and cured the queen." People are yelling they want it too. Are they really trying to open it again? Everyone's starving, acting like they can't understand how to stop following that smell. Assel just smiles, apologizes, and says, "That's it for today." Then he tells them to wait 3 full days. Dish tells them to wait and promises she'll cook the fish. Then he shoves Nearest forward. Nearest stiffens for a beat, explodes into a horrified scream, and Assal nods along like he just got the message. Dish leans in and asks Nearest if she won't whip up something tasty for her mom right now, so Nearest pauses, deep in thought, while Dish pushes her on. He's sure she'll bounce back fast if she can make her happy, and he swears it won't be hard. He shrugs and says there's nothing special here, but she watches every move as the cooking unfolds. Then he's convinced her mother will be blown away by the results. She saply claims he's a total zero in cooking, but Dish just grins and says, even the guy with no skills can make it, because cooking isn't about talent, it's about passion, and anyone can do it if they truly want to. At first, Nearest stays silent, then she blurts, "I get it," and jumps in taking his offer. Dish grins and snaps, then the training starts right now. While he adds with a sly smile, 3 days without sleep, piece of cake. Nearest stares at him like, 3 days without sleep, and Dish practically yanks her forward, shouting that they need ingredients right now. She panics, screams for them to wait, and Osel just freezes there, watching the whole scene unfold. So Nyaris ended up trapped in the terrible cook's shackles, meaning her training starts right now. Isle stands by the lake, saying Mrs. Wendell called her and ordered her to come here for something huge. And when she spots the lady, it feels like they're about to wait on someone, or something. The mermaid then plops by the water and stares straight into the distance. She steels herself, convinced the spirit of water singled them out for some reason, but she can't make sense of it. So she tightens her guard and then someone calls. Dish announces that Disha's special warm milk soup is finally ready, and the moment the Asal's spatial expression shifts, she blurts a bright bon appetit. She takes a bite right away and goes, "With weather this cool, it's perfect. Warm food makes winter something to actually look forward to." Dish grins and says he feels the same and misses. Wendell just stares at them, saying they haven't changed a single bit. Isle turns to Mrs. Wendell and blurts out that she's got to ask her something. then asks, straight up, how long she's known Dish. She listens and the truth hits her, she hasn't told them about it yet. Then she blurts, that happened in the summer, 2 years ago, one man tossed a cursed sword into the river right nearby. Osel snaps back to the memory and starts reeling from the incident. She continues, and Osel, he caught the culprit right after. She keeps talking and drops the worst bombshell. The river turned totally polluted, it went purple, and Asal remembers it like a nightmare, saying the whole sight was just awful. Disha can't believe 2 whole years flew by, then tells Wendell, I was furious back then. Wendell just nods like it was obvious, because this guy did something unforgivable. 2 years ago, drenched in rain, people were buzzing about the spirit's furious anger, so one man cornered the elder and demanded answers, and the elder snapped back. Mrs. Wendell was beside herself because the river was poisoned, and out there near the water, many people had already died. He grimly admits that almost everything has gone lifeless, the plants are rotting too, and warns that if things stay like this, it'll all fall apart. Then the elder explodes in fury, shouting that they have to calm the spirit's rage or the world gets wiped out completely. Deep in the forest, little Dish lies sprawled on the ground as someone orders him to wake up. He cracks his eyes open and blurts, who are you? Right in front of him sits the spirit of Mrs. Wendell, towering over him so big he can't stop himself from asking, wait, who are you? She's furious, doesn't he realize who she is? He shakes his head and admits he has no clue what she's talking about. Wendell shoots back that maybe it was him who sparked all this chaos. He snaps no and explains he didn't cause it, he just blacked out from hunger. Mrs. Wendell blurts out that she'd known it was him all along, and then her stomach drops in a rush of surprise. How did she get so hungry so fast? Dish lifts her head deadpan and asks who he is, then shoots right back, I'll tell you who I am. What? Dish cocks her head and asks if that means this rain is coming from her, and when she says yep, pure pride lights up her face. Then she grins, calls him little, and brags that this isn't even the best of what she can do. Dish roars in fury, calling her stupid, so what did she even do? She's frozen, asking why he's snapping like this because how dare he raise his voice. Then Dish demands she stop the rain right now or the plants will be ruined. She snaps back that this can't happen, whoever did it has to be punished. Dish presses again, so you really want to punish him, and she smirks saying, let me eat him and I'll end this rain. Then she grins like she's already tasting victory. Dish snaps that it tastes awful, then grins and jokes that the one who's supposed to be punished will be the one she eats. So Dish blows up, calling her stupid, and yelling that she should only eat when she's hungry, not to make a point. Dish swears she's furious because her stomach is empty, but she can't make sense of it and doesn't even know how to tell him the truth, so Dish decides, fine, I'll cook you something. Rain lashes down, and Dish huddles under a massive plant leaf like it's an umbrella, staring up as her mind races. She's amazed she can shift her body size, because right now she's the same size as him. He blurts out, hey, listen to me. And she nods like she's got something to say because he's sure of this. Dumping into the river is wrong, but you don't rope other people into it. He tells her that her actions can crush innocent people, and she can't live that way. She fires back that for spirits, every human is just the same, no one matters more, and if they punish, they'd have to punish everyone at once. Dish grinned and confessed that she honestly doesn't remember faces at all. Then he admitted he got it, even if he couldn't catch names worth a damn either. When her anger flared up, he pleaded with her to chill, shoved a piece of candy in her hand, and it ended up tasting way better than it had any right to. Wendell stares at his own tail in pure shock, then snaps at Dish, hey, listen. She shoots back, wait, does this mean you're cooking monster food now? Dish protests, don't make that face, and Wendell swears it'll be insanely tasty. Wendell spots it, and his stomach drops in pure horror. Right in front of them looms Adamanti, a massive Shellandal monster, the king of the seas. Thick root-like limbs crack the air, membranes stretch across his feet, and when he's ready, he hauls himself to the mountains, buries eggs in the ground, and lets the nightmare hatch. She gasps in pure horror, asking if that's really his goal. Then Dish spits back that she only lays eggs once every few years, and it only happens on the most brutally rainy days. She thanks Wendell because it was her rain that got her out, and she's thrilled to finally do something helpful, yet her eyes still worry as she asks, is it too big? Dish says it's all fine, if they don't come to him themselves, they'll get nothing but trouble. Right then, Adam and Ty snap their heads up and start screaming. Dish panics and blurts, what's wrong with you? While Del watches in total horror. 4 years ago, when he first came into view, he wasn't this aggressive. Wendell saw it plain. This wasn't rage, it was pain. So she steps in, checks him, and watches his body's color shift. And just like that, she realizes her job isn't optional anymore. Dish pleads, try it so you won't hurt him, and she snaps back, I get it now, I'm not going to eat you, I'm here to end your pain. Then Wendell drops down and grins, look at it like that though, he's kind of cute. The monster lunges out of nowhere, and the spirit snaps that she's furious too. Then she summons her magic and shoots up on a wave of water, punching it into a perfect water cage, and Dish can only stare as the monster gets trapped inside a spinning water ball. Wendell insists this is the better way because that's her power, and when she stares at the ball she smirks like, see, I was right all along. From underneath, we look up and spot it, a sword jammed into the turtle from below. Dish finally got it. This was pure torture, tearing him apart, and Wendell just shrugged like, yeah, I've had it pretty rough too. Then she yanked the sword off him with help. In the blink of an eye, the water around the turtle shifts from murky and dark to clear and crystal clean, like magic. She drops the turtle back in, then launches her proud little swim to the dish, grinning like she just pulled off the impossible. Dish snaps at her that she's cool and she shrugs like, of course, I'm a spirit, how could you even doubt that? Then Dish grins ear to ear because she's totally right. He blurts out, is it a cursed sword? And she snaps back, yeah. She swears it slipped into the sea thanks to the current, and after he thinks it over, Dish finally connects the dots, so that's why she called rains to cleanse the river. When Dell says it's true, she doesn't just conjure rain on command, she swears there's more to it than that. She looks at Dish smiling and laughing, and she can't figure out why. He says he believes she was gentle because she didn't slaughter that monster, like how could she not be good? Then she snaps back with a scream, I'm not kind at all. Only kindness toward people, but spirits should treat everyone. And he better not get the idea wrong. Dish grins and says that makes her even kinder. But her anger flares for a moment before she sighs and admits she still can't bring herself to forgive people. She snaps her head back and sees Adamantine grinning at her, and she blurts to Dish, is it really okay that he ditched you? Dish just smiles back, yeah, I'm fine, my real target is Adamantine. Wendell's caught off guard and it hits her like a light switch. She thinks she finally gets what his endgame is. Then Dish barrels in, yelling at her to follow, and together they push closer, until Dish screams that he's found it. Right there in front of them sits an egg jammed into the ground, steaming like it's about to hatch any second. Wendell bursts out, it's an egg, and fires one straight into the sky. Dish snatches it up and warns that this adamantium egg is brutally hard, so tough that even a simple egg smash could still hurt like crazy. Wendell spots a few crows nearby and asks about them, and Dish just confirms, yep, they just ate him. Wendell blinks in shock and says, of course, out here, even the animals end up becoming the teachers for us. Dish tells Wendell to hunt down more eggs before the rain cuts them off. Because if they don't, someone else will snatch them first. So Wendell nods, follows right behind, and Dish orders the adamantium eggs to get ready. Wendell drifts into a dreamy rant about adamantium dishes, and she's practically bouncing, begging to try them. So Dish points and declares they'll go first on this one, only for Wendell to swear it's ketchup with a smell so intense it hits like a punch, and she just keeps asking, wait, are you sure it's really ketchup? What? He swears this is a killer tomato, looks normal at first, but it's really a deadly monster that snaps and strikes with lightning the moment anyone gets close, chomping it open with its jaws, and every year it ruins the lives of countless people. Wendell stares at the monster, shocked out of her mind, and demands, how did you turn all that into ketchup? He grins and says, the trick, follow the smoke. Wendell frowns and snaps, smoke, what are you talking about? He swears that when the tomato killer breathes in the smell of smoke, it chokes itself out. And while it's stuck like that, you've got to snatch it fast and heat it up, because the smoke jams the magic's flow, trapping that power right inside the ketchup. He says the killer tomato is brutally sour, and Wendell shoots back, is that really true? Then he leans in and explains it's packed with internal organs, so once she slices it open, she'll find digestive fluid left behind. Wendell says he finally gets it, this liquid is why ketchup hits so spicy. Then he yells with pure joy that it's all true, asks if cooking is really this much fun, rattles off the ingredients, and admits they're weird as heck. That king of the bow isn't just some relic, it's got 4 limbs with a crown on top, and if you step near, it gapes up from the ground and drops adventurers into a trap. The whispering mushroom is a cruel, evil monster, small enough to hide in the dirt, yet its presence still messes with you, triggering allergies. He fires up the stove, announces they're frying the whispering mushroom with the king of Alchem, then fine-tunes the flavor with salt, tosses in madder-edge grass, and finishes it off by drenching the whole thing in ketchup. Wendell lurks nearby and blurts about that amazing smell, and when she looks over, she declares it's so red, perfectly, absolutely perfect. Then Dish cracks an egg and the liquid spills out, and Wendell fixates on the wild contrast with wide-eyed astonishment and playfully sends it into motion. She spots something white and blurts, what is that? Dish shoots back right away, egg milk, and she still doesn't get it, she just stares at him, baffled and asking with her eyes. Dish leans in and drops the truth. The adamantine egg is packed with milk, the embryos swell if you bury them past 90 days, and that milk is secretly loaded with magical power. Wendell blurts, wow, in pure disbelief, then Dish leans in like, tell me, isn't adamantium wild? He grins and says he'll mix it all up, promising she'll be pleasantly shocked the moment she tastes it. He cracks the egg, fries it, then rockets it into the air to flip it and cook the other side, and Wendell just stares, jaw on the floor, because that skill is unreal. He lands it right on the cereal, declares it ready, and then slices the egg open. Dish brags that this is his ultimate special, rice omelet cooked with an adamantium egg, and Wendell lights up for real, grabs a spoon and dives right in. She erupts in joyous screams, chanting that it's the most delicious thing she's ever tasted, melting on her tongue, and then she freezes, stunned that it was cooked from a monster. She says the egg is insanely salty and Dish snaps it into place. Turns out the monster lives right in salty seawater, and now she finally gets why. She swears the smell and the taste fuse together, like the ketchup gets a deadly boost from that killer tomato, and then out of nowhere something materializes ahead of her. Is it a real sight or just a mirage Disha's dish is conjuring? Even though she's a spirit, she's never seen anything like it, she can't stop admiring the sheer effect. Right then, Disha's voice cuts in and calls her name. With a grin, he asks how she likes the omelet. Is it tasty? She shrugs and says it's just average, but she wouldn't mind having more. Dish demands to know why she did it, and when she admits she loved it, he tells her to wait a second and whips up another omelet, only for it to flop onto the ground the moment he tosses it. He stares at Wendell, terror gripping him, and she stares back. He swears it was an accident, insisting it'll work out like he always does, 10 times over, but she snaps, screaming that he's lying because things never fail for him. He insists everything's fine, he'll eat it himself, so she takes the next one, and as she chews, she can't stop wondering who he really is. Sure, he seems quirky, but the more she watches, the more she realizes he's an absolute master in the kitchen. She's convinced those people's actions can't be forgiven, because if you forgive them, it only makes things worse. No matter how much food he slings onto her plate, even if it's delicious, she still won't let it go, though deep down there's more going on in her mind. She swears he's special, even if he's a total nobody. Because this kid cooks circles around any royal chef, and when he tells Wendell it's ready, she gets ripped right out of her own head. He set it up so the omelet carried a message on top, "Eat me," and she swallowed the words, then stared straight at Dish. Dish snapped back, saying he couldn't stand looking at that kind of face after tasting the meal he'd just made. She blurts out in shock if he gets it, and he snaps back, "Yeah, I do." Then he cuts in fast and laughs, "Come on, I'm a cook after all." His eyes harden as he admits he's taken so many lives just so he'd have something to eat for himself, and he says it'd be weird if things kept going like this. Wendell shoots back, "Aren't you afraid?" Dish grins and says, "That's exactly why I've got a request." He leans in and asks Wendell to eat him, pleasure and all, then Wendell stares at him for ages, completely lost on what he's even trying to pull. Dish tells everyone he poured a piece of himself into that ingredient, so eating it should feel like a victory. Wendell just stares on, awkward and stunned, while Dish stands there with steel in his voice, confident and waiting for the action to explode. Wendell bursts into loud laughter, and she gushes that he's so interesting, only for him to snap back, all rage and zero jokes, that he's speaking completely dead serious. Wendell leans in and says he can see in her eyes that he's both stupid and honest. Then he demands what she decided. "Are you gonna eat me or what?" She grins and says, "Yep, I've decided I'm eating you." She admits she can't do that, so she can't grant his request yet. The Dish glances at her, crushed, and Wendell nods, saying she's been pushed into delaying the whole thing. Then he leans in and demands, "So what do you mean by that?" She says it's just like leaving something delicious for later, like dessert, promising she'll dig in, just not right now. Dish beams so hard she practically shouts hooray. And Wendell panics at her reaction. She mutters something confusing about how happy he should be. She thinks about how he's got no family and no one but himself, yet there's something in him that feels different. Then she swears the rain won't last much longer. Time for us to say goodbye. He speaks her name and she turns, right on cue, to his request. He asks if they can meet again. She weighs it for a second, then lets out a tired sigh and shoots back. "Why are you so upset all of a sudden?" She reminds him she's a water spirit, she's always nearby. He lights up and says that means they'll see each other again for sure. Wendell shoots back, "Of course, then you'll always be fed right and with zero mistakes." She vanishes, dives straight into the water, and the Dish stays put. The water dries up, the clouds break apart, and bright rays spill down from the sky. Wendell Isle clenches her fists and vows she'll go cook, like that's how she wraps up their first meeting story. Then Dish jumps in, still calling her weird, and Wendell fires back, "Who would even talk like that, you zero cook?" She recalls how the spirits and gods couldn't agree on him, until it all came down to one cruel twist. His deliverance got delayed again. Then she snaps her gaze away and says she has nothing else left to do. Del whirls around and realizes she never told him, so she barks, "Turn back," and he does, spinning around on the spot. He spots the shocked Acel gaping with her mouth hanging open. He's confused, so he asks what's going on, but she snaps, furious that he even dared to ask. She yells it's nothing, then immediately pushes back. Do they really want to claim that Dish made that move back in that incident from 2 years ago? Dish panics and begs her to calm down, but she shrieks even louder. How could she possibly calm down? And demands to know if Mrs. Wendell will ever eat him. She's honestly relieved he managed to calm her down, and she's grateful. But then she grabs his attention and demands one promise. He'll never risk his life like that again. He fumbles an awkward answer, saying he had no choice, because if he hadn't, she wouldn't have calmed down. Acel snaps back, "No, this isn't my fault. The river's polluted and I won't take the blame for it." Dish is stunned by his outburst, then begs him not to throw his life away so easily because to her, he's a precious friend. He grins and tells her he finally gets it, because back then he was alone, so of course he made that choice, but now. Now he isn't alone anymore and he recalls the entire royal family, right down to the skeleton. He rushes to apologize to Asal and admits she's right, and Wendell even goes, man, we're such interesting guys. But Asal just waves it off. Don't stress, we won't lay a finger on Disha. She lifts her head and tells her it's coming soon. Then Asal snaps her gaze up too, pointing out that the lake has finally frozen solid, and that's when a strange shadow slides into view. Out of nowhere, a tiny fairy pops in front of them, and ice crystals start blasting out of her like a chilling warning. Wendell declares she's an ice spirit, technically also a water spirit, so she can claim ice for herself and they should accept her as one of their own, but Isle snaps back that she's never even heard of her, and Wendell fires back that she's a seasonal spirit. They fire questions at her and Dell answers she's the one who announces winter's arrival. And then she goes, you see those ice flows whipping through the air, look up, open your mouths. She jerks her head up, asking if those are really stars. Then something slams onto her head and Asal yelps that it hurts. When she snatches a piece, she realizes it's ice. She looks up again, and her vision turns blurry as she squeals that it's sweet candy. Wendell grins and tells her it's called star snow, ice and magic fuse together, and then icy fragments explode down to the ground. Wendell claims even the water spirits were born from sugar particles, so that's why magic tastes sweet, and she beams, thumping her own chest like, aren't they gorgeous? Dish stares in disbelief and blurts, wait, this is the first I'm hearing this. While Soleil and Juan keep chewing and Dish just shakes her head like, I'm already full. Asal whips her head around and realizes the ice spirit is gone, just vanished. Wendell blurts that her job is done and it'll end any second now. Asal just can't grasp it yet. They both snap their eyes up at the exact same time, and there it is, snow hammering down from the sky. Asal grins and tells Dish it's already winter, and admits this year felt nothing like the others. Meeting him is something she'll never forget. The moment her eyes shut, she lifts into the air, and in the total quiet, her stomach growls like thunder. Her face scrunches with pure awkwardness and Dish blurts out, shocked, are you hungry again? She shoots back with burning red cheeks that yes, she's starving. Dish sighs like there's no fixing it, then grins and says he'll solve it, so he grabs her and invites her to go with him. After Asal digs into her gratitude and thanks Dish for the food, she offers to help with the cleanup, and Dish doesn't even try to stop her. While they work, Asal spots something odd on the shelf, her face flipping to confusion, and Dish clocks it instantly. He leans in and tells her it's an ingredient. Asal blurts that she knew it, then demands to know what this ingredient even is. Dish rushes out an apology and tells her the truth. It's a lost ingredient. She doesn't get it. About 9 years ago, he was left to rot in the forest, fighting for survival even though he knew he could eat monsters, and he was just a kid barely making it. He could barely stand, his stomach growled like crazy, and he hadn't eaten in 3 days. Then he jolted up, sniffing the air, and spotted the source. When he finally saw it, he grinned and announced, "This smells insanely tasty." He sprints to the finish and spots a red stone up ahead, knocks on it, grins, and blurts that it's tough but not like a normal stone, then inhales its aroma and declares it's edible. He tries to take a bite and wish for a good appetite, but wham, he gets flung back hard, hearing someone yell that it hurts. Then he finally locks eyes with a massive dragon staring at him, stern as can be. The dragon twists toward him and growls, asking what he's doing riding on his back, and Disha can't even process it, because the dragon is talking. He flipped through a book and learned that dragons are nearly as smart as humans, and Dish lit up. He said he was relieved to finally be understood, then leaned in with sparkling eyes and asked if he could get a piece of his scale. The dragon roars in outrage that he's the strongest magical beast around, never fooled by any man. So why does he seriously think he'll be handing over even a single shred of his scales? Dish snaps that he's greedy, and then he snarls the words back like they burned, telling everyone to listen close because he's a red dragon, the only survivor of his kind. He claims he'll outlive everyone and stay even stronger than they are. So back off that insolent attitude and get out right now, or you'll hear him say he's willing to forgive once you've finally left. Dish boasts that he can already tell he's stronger than the dragon, but the dragon doesn't get it. Dish keeps pushing his plan, insisting that once he makes a dish from its scales, he'll be able to prove just how insanely delicious it is. The dragon is baffled and blurts, "Wait, so these scales, are they usually an ingredient for weapons?" Dish shoots back, "Do you look like an adventurer?" And the dragon just hangs his head, admitting he doesn't. Dish fires back, asking if he's really the one who doesn't get it, because his scales smell so damn delicious. The dragon snaps into a stunned pause, sniffing at himself like, "Wait, is this for real?" He can't even wrap his head around it, refuses to dwell on it, and the whole thing has him not happy at all. Then the dragon snaps into clarity and roars, "I get you." He swears he wants the heart, eat it, and he'll live forever, so Dish freezes, leans in, and asks, "But is it actually tasty?" The dragon snaps back, "No, because I know what I don't know." And he warns that unless he risks it and tries, he'll die the moment he lays his hands on his heart. Dish leans in and says he's interested, and the dragon freezes at those words. Then Dish pushes harder, asking for his scale but not his heart. The dragon can't even hide it anymore. He admits he's still reeling. He looks off to the side and tells Dish, "Fine, you can have a piece." The dragon admits he's even catching a little interest in cooking. Then Dish steps in, slides up to his scales, and throws his mouth wide open like he's starving. The dragon erupts into a massive, raging scream that won't stop. He tells him, "I'm not mentally ready yet," and then snaps, "Move faster, I'm starving." The dragon pauses, baffled, thinking, what kind of kid is this? Does he even know what he's doing? Then Dish grins and says, "Yeah, I know because I'm Dish after all." The dragon bellows at him to be careful and gentle, and Dish snaps back that he knows. Then the dragon rages that it hurts. Dish demands why he's screaming so much, and the dragon snarls for him to shut up, because it all boils down to him. Dish yanks off one scale for him, about 3, and the dragon even starts crying. Dish swears these scales are way lighter than he expected, and with all those layers piled up, he sniffs, grins, and drinks in the smell like it's a feast already. This is gonna taste delicious. The dragon stares them down as Dish starts scrubbing at the scales, claiming he's already peeled away the crust. Then the dragon smirks and boasts that he's great with a knife, so he won't buy that those moves look like a kid's, and he presses Dish. "Did you really learn it from someone?" Dish tells the dragon, "I picked it up a bit while I worked in cooking and then I did it myself." The dragon presses, "So that's really your talent?" Dish shakes his head hard, "No, I don't have that kind of skill." Dish says they're called zeros, and the dragon is stunned, because Dish claims he can cook with zero skill, and that's the best part, you don't need talent at all. The dragon can't believe a word of it. Some people are born with nothing to offer and their fate feels sealed. No skills means you're nothing in this world. And then it gets even darker. There are mothers who kill their own babies just to escape the burden and to spare the child from suffering. He has no clue who this kid is, standing right in front of him, grinning like nothing's wrong. And after being born into the worst conditions, the guy still keeps smiling. And of course, he's dying to taste what the kid cooks. Dish hit the heat tossed in a scale and decided to step away for a bit. Then the dragon leaned in and demanded, "What are you making?" Dish grinned and said, "Broth." The dragon sniffed hard, swore it smelled like the sun, and boom, memories crashed back of the time Dish once lived with a woman. He orders Dish to speed up, snaps that it'll be ready in no time, sprinkles salt over the greens he grabbed nearby, wraps the scales in cloth to keep them out of the broth, then drops that vegetation right in. He drops it on the table and announces that the dragon scale broth is ready. Then the dragon blinks in total confusion, saying he's never even heard of it. Dish can't stop wondering how he'll even eat. Then the dragon grins, tells him, "Don't worry, just watch," and boom, turns into a man right in front of his eyes. He lifts the cup, sniffs deep, and savoring the aroma like it's gold. But it's all about the taste, because a perfect smell can still hide a broth that just doesn't hit right, so he takes a sip. He blares, "This is delicious, excellent." Like he can't even believe it started as broth, because that's the aftertaste, time working its magic, and in all his life he's never, ever tasted anything like it. He swears the veggies somehow match the broth perfectly, then blurts out that it's a wild combo, and he can't even explain why it tastes so damn good. Or why he never noticed this sooner, even after decades of living like he'd already figured himself out. He swings around to Dish and demands, "How did you know it'd taste good?" Dish admits he didn't, he's only just realizing it now too. And yeah, it's his first time ever meeting a dragon, but one wild thought hits him. What if it's actually delicious? When the world learns he's zero, all those mixing experiments and brave dreams crash to nothing fast. But he still won't quit, because that's his real skill, his very core, and he can't stop wondering what talent the god gave him. After that, they dove deep into the past, trading stories over the most delicious food. Tell me, what could beat that kind of perfect, warm atmosphere? After ages, he finally laughs for real, thanks Dish, and blurts out what's next. Dish just grins and says he doesn't know yet. But he's craving a recipe nobody here has ever made, because this place is basically a playground for experiments. The dragon leans in and asks if that means he'll never come down from here. Then he snaps back, "Yeah, that's exactly it." And the dragon grins, saying it's the same kind of fate as him. He adds that an old tree waits out there, that monsters can't touch him in that place, and he can't shake the feeling he needs this spot more than anything. Dish practically thanks him on the spot, and dragon promises, "You'll love it." Dish presses, "So you're really going somewhere," and he snaps back that he wants to see the world again. After meeting him, it hits him hard. There's still so much mystery out there, and he's determined to set it right. Dish admits he's a little sorry, because after all this time, he finally has a companion, and the dragon warns him his journey won't last long. Not only that, but more new companions are on the way. He brags that it's super tasty, lets himself soak in the win. Even if he's got zero skill, he still managed to please the dragon himself. Then Dish snaps at him, "Next time you'll cook better." He tells Acel everything and shoots straight in with an apology. He can't use it yet. Acel declares it's the proof of a promise, and promises don't snap. She's stunned by his tale, and Acel just snaps back. She's sick of being shocked. Acel swears she'll get ready for today because he might come back tomorrow, or shock her and return even sooner. He's stuck in his thoughts when Isle leans in and asks what's on his mind, so he shuts his eyes and answers, "Nothing, it's nothing like that." Right now, that same dragon lunges toward the tree where Esau and everyone's huddled together.